We are the Newsroom team. Hello. Happy Monday if you've just joined us. This is Kendall Machamate and, of course, Rene West with myself, Eben Jansen, here on the SABC News channel with the Newsroom team, and we'll be with you until about midday today, bringing you all the latest with regards to news. Now, question of the day, of course, racism continues to be a scourge that's problematic here in South Africa. We ask you this question. Should racism be criminalised in South Africa? Of course, moves are afoot. We continue to see periodic incidents of racism, high profile these days because of social media on, well, all the platforms throughout. We're asking you the question today, should it be criminalised? We'll deal with various stakeholders a little bit later in the show. Of course, we've also got a couple of other things that we've got to deal with. Monday morning, lots of news. Let's go to Rene, who's standing by to bring us the latest update.
Begating MEC for Education, Panyaza Lesufi.
They're going to arrest us, guys. They're going to arrest us. They're going to arrest us. They can take us all, guys. They can take us all. They're going to arrest us. You guys arrest us. You can arrest us. Arrest us, guys. Arrest us.
Begating MEC for Education, Panyaza Lesufi, will this morning visit the Pretoria Girls High in Tshwane to investigate reports of racism at the school. President Jacob Zuma is positive that the Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Nairobi will increase investments in Africa. And government and water experts are on a quest to find solutions to South Africa's water crisis. Well, let's take a look at what's coming up in the sports with Kendall Machamate.
A hearty good morning to the both of you, and a hearty good morning to everybody at home on this beautiful Monday morning. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Chance offered again and taken this time. Vernon Philander gets the breakthrough.
Redemption is within the grasp of the Proteas as they look to choke the life out of the visiting New Zealand batting lineup.
Still Tau, still going Tau. Plays the ball through now. Kama Billiard in the penalty area.
And Mamelodi Sundowns show their pedigree as the top-ranking team in Africa as they crush SuperSport United 3-1 in the MTN 8 quarter-final.
Of course, to get the win today on this special track. You know, it's a legendary track. But Lewis, starting from the back, of course, made it a lot easier this weekend.
Even as Nico Rosberg wins the Belgian Grand Prix, it was Lewis Hamilton's day as he rode to third from the back of the grid to keep his lead in the championship race.
And third from the very back of the field, Lewis Hamilton. Well, that has got to be a special podium to have worked his way through the order and to have limited the damage effectively.
Certainly jam-packed weekend of sports I've got to report back to you, but for now, it's back to Rene West who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Begating MEC for Education, Panyaza Lesufi, will this morning visit the Pretoria Girls High in Tshwane to investigate reports of racism at the school. Black pupils at the school are allegedly discouraged from having hairstyles such as afros, dreadlocks and braids. Pupils claim they are also banned from speaking their mother tongue, among other things. Lesufi says he received a petition last Friday. President Jacob Zuma is positive that the Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Nairobi will increase investments in Africa. He says more than 70 agreements were concluded, and the summit provided a win-win situation for both Africa and Japan. Japan has pledged billions to improve infrastructure on the continent.
While South Africa is Japan's largest trading partner in Africa, President Zuma was clear that the continent is working under a policy of leave no country behind.
Since Japan, like many, are interested in terms of investing in Africa, etc., that should be, in a sense, structured in a way that all countries are able to benefit. We are able to raise the issues collectively, particularly when it comes to bigger kind of projects.
Zuma pointed out that Japan's growing investments in infrastructural development in Africa is one of the immediate gains from TICAD, indicating that this will see increased free movement of persons and goods across borders. South Africa is championing the North Corridor project, which links East, West and the Southern African regions.
We want the network that is going to enable the goods and people of the continent to move quicker and faster.
Zuma, however, says there is need to balance trade between Japan and Africa.
There should be an important percentage that is almost built in the investment in terms of joint ventures, so that the interactions benefits both.
The two-day TICAD summit came to a close on Sunday. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Kenya.
The Southern African Development Community will meanwhile host its 36th Ordinary Summit of Heads of State and Government in Mbabane, Swaziland. The meeting starts tomorrow and ends on Wednesday. President Jacob Zuma arrived last night. 15 SADC member states, including the SADC Executive Secretariat, will attend.
The summit will receive a progress report on the Secretariat's activities, proposal and challenges. Discussions have already taken place on how SADC can help grow economies and hasten development in Southern Africa. Beneficiation is seen as key.
Because if we don't, you will have processed and finished goods only coming from one country, unfortunately South Africa. But if we work together and implement on that, we think it will take us a long way.
During the last SADC summit, Zimbabwe cautioned against exporting raw materials.
If we continue as exporters of raw materials, we are sure to remain trapped in the jaws of underdevelopment, while those who add value on our behalf flourish at our expense.
International Affairs Minister Maitenkwana Mashabane emphasized the need to continue with the implementation of Zimbabwe's resolution at a summit last year which focused on the region's industrial strategy. Infrastructure, another predicament SADC is faced with in its power and transportation sectors. The summit will also take stock of the conflicts within the region.
We do have issues, as you have said, in the DRC. We still have outstanding matters or issues in Lesotho.
Ghana's president, who is the current chairperson of SADC, will give the keynote address and hand over the SADC chairperson's badge to the incoming chairperson. Lehana Tsotetsi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The South African Communist Party is calling on the ANC to bring its consultative conference forward. The SACP also came out strongly in defense of embattled Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. The party held its Central Executive Committee meeting in Kempton Park on Gauteng's East Rand over the weekend.
Walking shoulder to shoulder on the local government election campaign trail, the SACP aggressively canvassed voters to back the ANC in the August municipal vote. The election results therefore came as a bitter disappointment, with the ANC losing control of key metros, Johannesburg, Tshwane and Nelson Mandela Bay.
We urge the ANC to convene a non-elective consultative conference. Under this, and in this general context, the SACP has taken note of calls by the ANC Youth League for an early ANC National Elective Conference. We are also aware that the ANC Youth League is being used by others to test the waters in this regard. While any decision on the timing of an ANC National Conference must, of course, be made by the ANC itself, the SACP is firmly of the belief that the motivation for this call is entirely factional.
The Communist Party has raised concerns over an ANC-NEC statement that pointed out that the ANC takes collective responsibility for poor performance in the elections. Nzimande has raised concerns over the Hawks' handling of the Pravin Gordhan SARS rogue unit investigations. Dumala Mohlaudi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Speaking earlier on Morning Live, ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte responded to the discussions at the SACP's conference as well as other issues.
I think the issues raised by the SACP arising out of the Central Committee meeting are best placed before the ANC in a bilateral, where we can all clear out what are perceptions and what are really facts. First of all, I think the idea that a question or allegations made against the Minister of Finance by the Hawks are politically motivated seem not to have any basis in fact. And the point is that we need to separate things out. Firstly, the allegations made against the minister arise out of his job as the Commissioner of SARS and not currently has anything to do with his job as Finance Minister. It's the same person, yes, but remember that the President appointed someone that he has complete faith and trust in as a Minister of Finance, had appointed him to COGTA before that because he trusted him, and brought him back to finance because he trusted him. So the nuance that somewhere, somehow, this is politically motivated and that the hand of the president is involved in this appears to be a concoction that is leading to having the country blame the president for whatever the allegations are that the Hawks are making against the Minister of Finance. Ivan Pillay and Van Lochenberg and Piet Ricci did the right thing. They went to the Hawks, they went to hear the allegations, and we don't know what they responded to. The Minister of Finance chose not to. He chose instead to mobilize civil society in a manner that is really unacceptable, to give the impression that he as an individual is under attack by the ANC. And honestly speaking, that is actually not factual.
The ANC Youth League in KwaZulu-Natal has lobbied for AU leader Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma to take over from President Zuma as ANC president, while the SACP came out guns blazing attacking the ANC leadership. All this at the funeral service of ANC Youth League leader Xolani Ngobu and SACP's Nontsikelelo Blose over the weekend.
A moment to bid farewell to a fallen hero. But the service quickly turned into a political rally, with some lobbying for their preferred candidate for the ANC leadership positions, as well as attacking alliance partners.
As we go to this early conference, once they open it, we will nominate a female to be the president of the ANC. There are so many women in the ANC, but we would like to say that Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma tops the list.
The Ngobo family says it wants justice, not bloodshed.
I plead to the Lord to help us not to die for comradeship, but go forward with service delivery. I plead with you not to use guns because they won't help us.
About a kilometer away, another funeral. SACP's local leader, 44-year-old Nontsikelelo Blose, was gunned down last Sunday. Leaders here pointed to political divisions.
The issue here in Shanga is a political issue which needs to be resolved by the leadership of ANC and SACP.
Current ANC challenges played itself out.
The ANC national, provincial and the regional leadership generally shows little collective willingness or capacity to deal decisively with these issues.
For Blose's family, her death is a huge loss.
Nontsikelelo was a woman on the outside, but had the strength of a man. She did everything not only for her family, but also for community.
Both parties have called on police to arrest those responsible for the deaths. Ayanda Mhlongo, SABC News, Njalo.
Government and water experts are on a quest to find solutions to South Africa's water crisis. This year's World Water Week takes place in Sweden. It brings together various international stakeholders who will discuss Earth's water challenges under the theme Water for Sustainable Growth.
South Africa is a water-scarce country with lower than average rainfall. As the effects of global warming become more apparent, causing dam levels to drop, communities are left to bear the brunt. More water restrictions are expected in the coming week.
The restrictions are bordering on particularly the industries, the major water users. Secondly, it is to our big municipalities that are also using water and have a high level of water loss that they can account for.
Local stakeholders are meeting with their international counterparts to engage in issues relating to the global water crisis.
Out of this World Water Week, one of the things that we want to really, as the water family from South Africa, want to really promote, it's about partnership, and partnership. And that partnership, looking at sharing of human capital resources, looking at better use of financial resources, but make sure that all solutions are informed by research and innovation because of the realities of climate change.
World Water Week takes place in the Scandinavian country. The conference attracts thousands of water stakeholders, each trying to find solutions to keep the taps running. Hasina Gori, SABC News, Stockholm, Sweden.
Well, that's your top news for now, but before we get into the further discussions of the day, we are asking you this question. Should we criminalize racism in South Africa? That's what we want to know from you. So send us your views at SABC Newsroom. That's our Twitter handle. Let's go over to Eben for more.
Yeah, Renee, we have lots of these different incidents popping up all over South Africa. In this time of social media, it seems as if they are on the increase. But if that is the case or not, in the next hour, well, that's between 10 and 11, we'll be delving into the issues of racism. Of course, today our top news story is the Gauteng MEC for Education, Mr. Panyaza Lesufi, will this morning visit the Pretoria Girls High School in Tshwane to investigate reports of racism at the school. Learners are complaining that, well, they're treated differently from other school-going learners and that they're not allowed to wear braids and the like. We'll see what comes out of that. We have reports that there's also a march plan to the school. We'll have a reporter there a little bit later to give us a live update. But let's have a look at what's happening on social media with regards to this story. Of course, we're asking the question, should racism be criminalized? Here are some of your tweets with regards to this. That is girl, boy, Pelo says, as a parent, there we go, as a parent of a little girl, as an African who loves all people and all nationalities, I fully support the hashtag Stop Racism at Pretoria Girls High. That's one. Mama Tiger, she's at Keke Moyalefa, says, my daughter is only 2 now. Hope we won't be facing this kind of discrimination by the time she starts school. Of course, that is the hashtag that's causing all of this stir. Stop Racism at Pretoria Girls High. Raya says, so grateful to these girls talking about Stop Racism at Pretoria Girls High. Mofapo Pedi Mofokeng says, young black girls are woke. Are woke? Have awoken, I think. Mishka says, a niche of light. Teachers saying that if anything goes wrong, they are calling security. That's an hour ago. So, emotions are running high there. This is from Kath Jenkins. She says, the hashtag Stop Racism at Pretoria Girls High. Beautiful, wonderful young women. You are inspiring my daughter. Thank you. Yes, young people are saying no more, and we're living in the social media time. We ask you the question. Don't forget our question today. It deals with racism. We see continuous instances of racism in South Africa, especially on social media. We ask you the question, should racism be criminalized in South Africa? Of course, there are moves afoot in South Africa, and the thinking is around that. So send us your tweets at SABC Newsroom. We'd love to hear what you think. Of course, it is the one thing that really polarizes South Africa is continued instances of racism, and high-profile ones, mind you, we see continually popping up in social media and in the mainstream media. Let's take a look now at our picture of the day. Well, this one is a very interesting one. It's about Richard Branson, all battered and bruised. There we go. After he crashed his bike, my life was literally flashing before my eyes, he wrote. I really thought I was going to die. I went flying head first towards the concrete, but fortunately my shoulder and cheek took the brunt of the impact, and I was wearing a helmet that saved my life. Yes, wear a helmet, Sir Richard. No one is immune. They say there are only two kinds of cyclists, Sir Richard. Those that have fallen and those that are still to fall. Anyhow, it's been a tough weekend for Springbok rugby, for those of you that follow rugby. Peter de Villiers, P. Divvy, yes, he has some advice for Alistair Coetzee. He tweeted this, and this is our tweet of the day. Coach at Coach Divvy, who says, "Don't cry for me, Alistair Coetzee." Talking about the hashtag South Africa versus Argentina. Of course, South Africa were well beaten by Argentina in Salta over the weekend. 26-24 reverse. To put a little bit of pressure, if you trust today's journalists, put a little bit of pressure on Alistair Coetzee. What happened about giving him man a little bit of time, like they gave Heine Kameya 4 years? They nearly gave him 8 years. Anyhow, let's take a quick look at what's happening in the courts today. Now, we start in the Northern Cape, where an ANC regional leader is expected to appear in the Postmasburg Magistrates Court in connection with the murder of DA Councillor-elect Johannes Baatjie and his business partner, Shuping Nonse. Then in Mahikeng, the trial of 19 minors charged with events leading up to the Marikana shootings 4 years ago now will resume in the Northwest High Court. Anele Zonke and 18 others are facing charges of murder, robbery, malicious damage to property, and the unlawful possession of firearms. Then, down in Stellenbosch in the Western Cape, property mogul Jason Roeder will be back in the Magistrates Court in the Boland town this week after spending the weekend behind bars. He's, of course, charged with the murder of his wife, Susan, at the Spear Wine Estate in the Boland last month. His legal team is expected to apply for bail. Now, these are very high profile and very interesting stories. You'll be able to get more detail throughout the day as they develop right here on this very channel and on this very show. Now, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, well, we're going to shift the focus to the abuse of young children, statutory rape, amongst other things. So don't go away, and don't forget our main question today, of course. Should racism be criminalized in South Africa? How do you view that? Should that be the case? Anyhow, you're watching Newsroom. We'll be back shortly.
Now, this is Trends, of course, your one-stop serving of all that's juicy and trending in the world of entertainment and showbiz. My name, of course, is Refill Wemwilo.
I'm Dr. Sello Mutaung, and this is Health Talk.
A very good morning and welcome to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jolly.
My name is Dumile Matters.
William Mulebati.
My name is Mpo. What time is it? It's question time.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News Channel.
Hello again, you're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. Good morning to you. Now, in the last week, several cases of abuse against children have been brought to light. From the sad case of a 6-year-old Kutluano Kharesape, who was brutally murdered while trying to protect his mother, to older men luring and manipulating young girls into sexual relations, as well as schoolgirls being impregnated by their teachers. It seems that a lot still needs to be done to find the cause or to find a way to deal with these horrific incidents. Now, joining us from our Polokwane studio this morning to talk about these and about the legal aspects around it is Dr. Annette van der Merwe. A very good morning to you, Dr. van der Merwe. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning.
Are you surprised by all these kinds of cases that we're seeing, from school-going children being impregnated by teachers to the likes of the 6-year-old who was brutally murdered protecting his mother and others? How do you respond to all these cases that we seem to have in our media constantly?
Well, it is first of all shocking. And courts have remarked for years now that we are actually facing a crisis as a country. So, yes, sexual abuse is rife, and the heavier sentences do not seem to stop the commission of sexual crimes against children, especially in the school environment. Children are very unsafe where they should be safe, actually.
In your experience, what are some of the most common abuses that are being perpetrated against young people in South Africa? We understand, of course, sexual abuses and statutory rape and so forth.
Well, there are interesting reports out, and I read something last night which indicates that at school, children are the most exposed to the commission of crimes, and it can vary from sexual crimes right through to robbery, theft, even murder.
Now, reporting a case of child abuse, how does one go about doing this? What's the sort of legal framework, or if you want to operate outside of the legal framework, what does one do?
Well, of course, sexual abuse per se is very underreported, and there can be many reasons for that. First of all, there can be shame attached to the crime. Secondly, the parent or custodian can prevent the child from reporting it. This person might be economically or emotionally dependent on the perpetrator. The victim could be threatened to keep silent. So many victims opt not to report it, and I think they don't necessarily want the perpetrator, if it's intrafamilial, to go to jail, but they want the person to stop. So, and that is not that easy. But if they choose to lay a complaint, they must, of course, approach the police, and there will be special people, hopefully, to take their statements and to open a docket and assign an investigator to this matter. And their statement should be taken in private. And then once they reach the court phase, they must know that they can ask to be protected via in-camera proceedings. They can ask for an intermediary through whom they can testify, and in that way they can be out of sight of the perpetrator and also in a more child-friendly environment.
Now tell us about the child. At what age, for instance, can a child seek legal assistance? And then what's the correct procedure should they go through when laying a charge against someone as a minor?
Well, they should approach the police station. I've picked up that several child victims recently had advocates as their representatives. Unfortunately, in South Africa, I think that is a huge area where there is improvement needed, because we don't have, like in England and America, victim services or victim advocates. So when they have a victim advocate, it's in a private capacity, like with the case of Zephanie Nurse, the recent case. It was the director of the Centre for Child Law who represented her. Marley van Breda, she was also represented by an advocate from the bar. So we desperately need somebody, that position of a child, of victims advocacy, of advocates and victim service providers in this country, and we should look into that, because victims are foreign to the system, they are vulnerable. They don't know what to expect. They have to deal with the media suddenly if it's a high-profile crime or a very violent crime or a crime that attracts a lot of attention. So they truly need assistance and protection.
What are the effects, long-term and short-term, of abuse against the child? And how does this kind of trauma, how does this affect not them immediately, but also in the medium and long term?
Well, there is a lot of research done about the effects of child sexual abuse. There's a brilliant novel written, or not a novel, more a biography, Out of the Dark, which provided a lot of insight to me personally. But there's also scientific research out there. It influences the children's development, their emotional development, their later intimate relationships, their sense of security, of self-esteem, of safety. So it has huge long-term after effects. But I can also say I recently had interactions with a victim of child sexual abuse. She was one of two sisters who were abused by their stepfather, and she opted to go for therapy. And she was in a position to afford it as well. And she can truly say that she is free from that abuse and she has worked through it and it no longer controls her, while the opposite is true for her sister. So it is very individual, but I would truly urge people who can get to counseling and therapy to make use of those opportunities.
Why do you think, Dr. van der Merwe, do we have these high levels of abuse and infringement of rights of children in South Africa?
That's a hard question. Well, if I read the many law reports and I read about scenarios from rural areas where people are without employment, where they linger around, bored, that is truly one reason I would think. I think it's a moral thing. I think there's a lack of guidance, a lack of proper education about sexual issues. And well, the feminists say it's a matter of power. Men feel powerless. That's why they go there.
It's not a question of...
But it's not only men.
Yeah. It's not a question of hyper-masculinity and this playing out in the general high levels of violence that we see in South Africa.
It could be. I'm not... that's not my area of speciality. But I know there is research and there is dialogue going on along those lines, and it's truly a complex issue. But it's alarming, and I think we should address the roots of this issue and try and find out what exactly contribute. I think there's more than one factor, and address those factors.
From your background, though, with your level, with your expertise, a stable-minded human being that would not commit these kinds of crimes. I'm talking about physical sexual abuse, or in some cases we see killing of children and so forth. What causes that in your experience?
A lack of reflection, a lack of self-control, high levels of frustration, immaturity. It's very difficult.
Dr. van der Merwe, I thank you for joining us from our Polokwane studios. I know I'm asking you tough questions, but we as a nation are dealing with these issues, and at times it's very difficult to get your head around what is going on. Thank you once again for being so frank in answering the questions.
Thank you.
That, of course, is Dr. Annette van der Merwe joining us from Polokwane this morning to talk about, well, the issues we're suffering with regards to the abuse of children. Of course, quite a few high-profile cases before the courts here in South Africa. One of those, of course, a six-year-old was killed in protecting his mother from rape. High levels of school teachers who are supposed to look after young girls impregnating young girls. Case before the court with some victims as young as 12 years old. Now, that's statutory rape. But then, of course, there are other incidents that we are looking at with regards to violence against children. Other story right now, of course, in the news, the South African Communist Party and SANCO have joined the ANC Youth League in asking for an urgent conference to elect new leaders within the ANC. Let's just take a look at some of the comments that's been coming in with regards to this. This one from Amukelani Chauke, who says, I find it hard to take the SABC seriously. The least said about them, the better, says Amukelani. Simon Murray says, SACP proposed the removal of the Scorpions and replaced with the Hawks, who are not independent. Why are they crying now? Hands off Province, South Africa, says Simon Murray. Kolani Samata says, what can we make of the SACP press briefing yesterday? That was a move of a desperate group that is sidelined, he says. Oh, those are some of your tweets. With regards to the story, let's go onto our Facebook page and take a look what's happening there. Now, a ritual-related murder trial against a 53-year-old... There we go. Against a 53-year-old traditional healer, Vusiwana Baloyi, is expected to continue this morning at the Limpopo High Court in Toyando. Then, further north, Zimbabwe seems to be on the verge of a revolt by uniformed forces amid reports that some unpaid rank-and-file members have joined mass protests demanding the resignation of President Robert Mugabe and his administration. Interesting story. We'll keep an eye on that one. Finally, Japan has committed billions of dollars, some say around $30 billion for various projects here on the African continent. Now you can find this and a whole lot more on our Facebook page, or you can go to our news website. It's sabc.co.za/news, where you can get the latest updates. Now, let's take a quick look at the front pages from around the globe. We'll start in Europe, where the Times reports that Theresa May is set to fly into a damaging row with her Chinese hosts at next week's G20 summit after British officials threatened to unravel a deal on the Hinkley Point nuclear power plant. Then we move to the United States. The USA Today says contractors who reinforce buildings on the cheap may have run up the death toll in central Italy's devastating earthquake, and they could face criminal charges. This, according to a local prosecutor there yesterday. Finally, the Australian reports that Malcolm Turnbull will challenge a new parliament today to fast-track 25 priority reforms in a policy onslaught that prepares an acid test for Labour, while racing to overcome crossbench fears that could wreck his agenda in the Senate. Those are the international headlines. Time for us to take a short break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
Increasing internet connectivity in Africa leads to an increased political discourse.
They do see social media as a threat to power.
People are also using technology in innovative ways to solve the continent's problems and create new content. And we have to deal with new problems that arise because of new technologies.
You end up losing your identity within the game.
On Network, we have Africa's technology, gaming and social media news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
The Goodman Gallery is celebrating 50 years promoting art from all sectors of life.
Actively involved in social and political life of South Africa, and we really have been. It's been a fascinating place to be and to watch.
Your personal style is synonymous to your signature statement.
Style is unique. It is a representation of you, your personality, the things you like. It speaks on your behalf, and it just represents the kind of person that you are, your uniqueness.
It's hilarious, you know, apart from anything else. It's the satire, the sort of commentary on what we kind of take for granted as we we exist in daily life.
Vote for Wonder Boy with your heart. Vote for Wonder Boy with your heart and run at cinemas nationwide.
For your weekly dose of arts and entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom now. The Twilight Children's Home in Hillbrow, on the brink of closure, is being saved. 3 months ago, the SABC uncovered the plight of scores of boys who'd been kicked out of the facility. They were forced back on Johannesburg streets, having to fend for themselves.
It was meant to be a refuge from a harsh life on the streets, one that would improve their prospects and circumstances. But more than a year ago, these boys were once again subjected to a brutal life with devastating consequences.
An escape from a cruel reality. In just 12 months, Sinki Mompela's life changed drastically. He was evicted from Twilight Children's Home. He didn't have a court order allowing him and others to be accommodated there. At the time, he was writing midterm grade 12 exams. He now uses Nyaupe.
Doing drugs on the street, I'm keeping myself calm from thinking of the family, my background, and what happened to Twilight from Twilight. That's why I'm using this drug. It's Nyaupe. It makes me feel like free, you know.
Senzo Mtamo, a once promising soccer player, his dreams in shreds. Mtamo was in grade 11 when he was displaced. To counter the mean life on the streets, he too turned to drugs.
When I was in Twilight, I thought things will be sweet and nothing's going to happen to us. We're going to live our dreams. So we failed to live our dreams by Twilight's people when they kicked us out, because we were really schooling there and we were doing good at school.
There is this act which says children of this age are not supposed to be staying in the shelter because they don't have court orders. And you end up seeing that child back in the street and turning to criminal activities. Is very hurting.
3 months ago, the SABC reported on this tale of tribulation and desperation. At the time, Gauteng Social Development vowed to act swiftly. But the two have only just been admitted to a drug rehab center, and only after repeated inquiries by the SABC. And the Twilight Children's Home has a new benefactor who will ensure the doors remain open. While Sinki and Senzo have been rescued, countless others remain trapped in this vicious cycle. Gillian Pillay, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, of course, we ask you a question of the day, and I can tell you that Gauteng MEC for Education, Panyaza Lesufi, this morning will visit the Pretoria Girls High, who are being accused, of course, of racist practice at the school. Now, we ask you, should racism be criminalised here in South Africa? At the top of the hour, 10 o'clock, we'll cross there live and we'll get an update and we'll see what is happening on social media. We've seen a whole host of scenarios playing out this morning outside of the school, as people are very unhappy with what's happening there. Let's take a look at some of your live tweets, what you've been talking to us around the issue of racism and should we criminalise it. Mongise Nyati, he says, Newsroom, definitely. Racism must be criminalised and punishable. It's a cancer that seeks to undermine the spirit of humanity in society. That one from Mbongi Niseni, talking to us about our question of the day. Should racism be criminalised? Lechasa Moldo says, Newsroom, truly, racism must fall. Racism should be criminalised. Those promoting racism should be arrested, finish and klar. he says. And, of course, at Makgopong is where you can contact him. Michael Mdichwa says, Newsroom, why nowadays bad things are embarking at school? Future of our generations. Of course, he's talking about the issues of racism that we've seen at our schools. Now, we expect, well, there's a march being planned to the school for today. We'll see in a short little bit, we'll see what is happening at the school itself when we cross there live. But, of course, let's look back now at what has been a weekend of mixed results and emotions for South African sports fans. From the Boks, who were completely outplayed, and our thought in Argentina, outmuscled as well, I'd say, to the Proteas. Well, they're not closing in on it yet. They've started quite well in their chase for a much-needed series victory over New Zealand. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for South Africans. Then, those of cricket followers, the long-awaited return of Vernon Philander and Dale Steyn's borne much fruit. Faf du Plessis getting 100, as well as JP Duminy getting runs. The Boks doing great. Giving their detractors something to talk. But let's talk about the cricket. The cricket first, of course. It was nice to see the South Africans apply themselves and get runs in this very crucial game.
Finally, you know, they've been seeking redemption. There's been a lot of talk about where to now for the Proteas. I'll tell you what, even when the first test was played, I can count a number of, on one hand, friends of mine on social media were talking about this particular test. It's almost as if it happened in a black hole. But all of a sudden, they're scoring runs. The top five are scoring runs for the first time in a while that the top five are getting a half century. So fantastic stuff. And Faf leading from the front as well, getting himself 112 not out.
Yeah, I think people don't realise this is a very good New Zealand side. Of course, getting underway in about 15 minutes' time. We'll keep people updated, but this is a very good New Zealand side.
That it is. Tim Southee is doing extremely well. Kane Williamson, he's considered one of the best batsmen in the world. And, you know, he's out there. He's trying to apply pressure to our seamers who's been doing very well. A lot of people have been waiting for Vernon and Dale to come back. And you know what? It's borne much fruit waiting for them.
You know, on social media, Vernon takes a lot of stick for his weight, amongst other things, and the like. But he's a world-class performer, isn't he?
That is his comeback roaring, and his comeback, and that stain remover partnership with Vernon is actually like doing exactly what we've always wanted it to do, and taking wickets and putting the opposition under pressure.
Let's go to rugby quickly now. Yeah. Of course, we've seen. Let's play us the clip because it's so heart-wrenching on a Monday morning. We were outplayed by Argentina for long periods in this game.
You know what? Going into Salta, a lot of people were talking about how tough it was going to be, but we were all expecting a win. Didn't happen. The Argentinians had other ideas. Their fans had other ideas, and in fact, the players themselves brought it for the Springboks, and the Springboks didn't front up.
At times, there were really moments of brilliance, like this Brian Abana try and the like. But we spoke about this a month ago when Alistair Coetzee was appointed. You got to give this guy a chance, like they gave Heineke Meyer 4 years. You got to give this guy a chance to mould the team and create an identity. And they scoffed at me when I said, are we prepared to lose a few matches 100%. In order to change the way we play?
Absolutely. We need to be prepared to take some losses, honestly, because what we're trying to do, we want these guys to be able to think on their feet and play what's in front of them. And for them to be able to do that, they need to build the trust, the confidence in each other to get there. So they will have some losses on the way.
And the calls for Morné Steyn to come back, and he missed quite a few kicks. OK, this one he slotted, but he missed a couple.
It's like Elton had, you know. Yeah. Apparently, Elton's got a bit of a pelvic injury that he's now dealing with.
Yeah, he's got a groin.
Yeah, it's a groin injury, yeah.
We all have a groin.
A groin injury.
OK, he has a groin injury.
The point being that we need to give the guys a chance. The Argentinians were much better, but the Springboks, for them to get to where we want them to be...
And South Africans, you know, we can be so horrible. Give credit to these guys, because they've come a long way.
Yeah. They've come a long way, and they're doing extremely well against the Springboks, one of the top rugby nations in the world.
It's fair to say now that Argentina, having made the World Cup semi-final twice in a row, they're a superpower in the world of rugby.
Absolutely. You know what a lot of people don't know is that all along they've been playing only amateur rugby. It's only recently that they professionalized the rugby and started bringing the players back from France, from England, and actually playing in Argentina. And that's why right now we're getting them competitive in Super Rugby as well as on the international stage.
Now, his favourite one for the weekend, of course, was Lewis Hamilton coming from behind to...
Coming from behind.
Coming from behind.
The man was 21st, and he came and got a third. But one of the things that stood out for this particular race in Belgium, the Belgian Grand Prix, were the crashes. There were numerous crashes. It was from the word go, turn one, we already have a crash. We've got Verstappen involved with the Ferraris and taking the Ferraris out of podium contention. But with that said, I think Lewis Hamilton coming through with a 55-place grid penalty for 3 engines that he brought in free practice to make sure that he can last. Look at this.
Minardi is yet to do the weather, but what do you say to that, Jet?
Yeah, you know what?
It's
just gone, but it's okay. I was also just impressed with Mercedes. Those guys are phenomenal. They do some serious good stuff. Ferrari...
I mean, they just seem to...
That particular crash, we've got some more footage of that crash coming up just now. That particular crash, had it been in any other kind of vehicle at any other time, would have had a fatality.
The guy walked away. It was Kevin Magnussen, was it?
Yeah, Kevin Magnussen.
He walked away. He had a little bit of an ankle issue, was it?
An ankle issue, but he's fine. He's looking to be good for Monza.
At 250 kilometers an hour to crash into a barrier like that and walk away, that's pretty good.
That says a lot for safety standards. That says a lot for safety standards, and you've got to remember that everything that we're talking about in terms of safety standards and the like, it's going to translate to what gets put in passenger cars at some point.
Now, Lewis Hamilton quickly... He's going to win a 3rd title this year.
It looks like he's running away with it. He's got the goods on Nico Rosberg. Nico Rosberg is scared of the guy. He even has to mention him in his own victory speech. Can you believe that?
Do you follow a bit of the...
Yeah, I certainly do. Yeah, I loved it. For a long time, I used to follow Red Bull, but I gave up on that because Sebastian Vettel left there, and I was basically following him. But with Ferrari, he's struggling, and I'm also, just gonna jump ship basically.
Typical South Africans. We love a winner, and if you don't win, we will divorce you immediately and move on.
That's how we roll.
That's how we roll, guys. That's very, very tough. But on a personal note, Man United won again in the last minute this weekend.
Hence the colours, huh?
I was very happy to bring that to you guys. It's been a really interesting sporting weekend.
Very good. Just lastly on the Premier League, I'll tell you, all these new coaches that have made the Premier League the Championship League of Managers, they've done very well. Conte's done well, Guardiola's done well, Mourinho's done well. No, very good.
It's going to be great. Thank you very much to Kendo Mahamati and Tiete Munara, just busted in here to come and give us his 5 cents. Hopefully we'll leave now and go do the weather. The weather is up next.
All right, welcome to my side of the corner. We are expecting a bit of clear conditions right across much of South Africa today. It's going to be quite a hot day. I can guarantee you that. If you're in Pretoria, do expect a maximum of 30 degrees. Oudtshoorn is sitting just around 36. I'll show you in just a moment. I'll take a look at this. No rainfall is expected over much of South Africa for this week, in fact. Just a bit of clouds that will be coming in maybe Wednesday, Thursday, because of a cold front that is approaching the Western Cape province. And take a look at those temperatures. It looks like it's going to be quite a warm day. Pretoria, 13, 28 for Maputo, and cool weather for Antananarivo, though, over Madagascar with a maximum of only 18 degrees. Lusaka's at 27, 25 for Harare, and 27 towards Windhoek. So some sunny skies also coming up for the southern parts of the DRC and over the northern parts of Zambia. We're expecting partly cloudy skies, rainy weather for Brazzaville, Libreville, as well as Yaoundé. Bangui, in fact, expects some heavy rainfall. There's thunderstorms that are also coming your way there, so you might want to look out for those. And otherwise, Kigali, Kampala, Nairobi, those are expected to be in the clear in terms of rain. Just a bit of temperature drop in Kampala, 22 degrees. So cool weather is expected there, even into Addis Ababa. Mogadishu is at 28, and Mombasa also has a big drop at 24 degrees. That's something you don't see a lot. It usually stays around 28 and 31. So, yeah, it's getting much cooler along that coastal part of Kenya. It is going to be still very hot for the northern part and also dry weather there. No chance of rainfall from Sudan towards Egypt, as well as over the Middle Eastern regions into Baghdad, Damascus in Syria. Nothing changes there for you. No rainfall. Temperatures are still high up. Baghdad 41 degrees, 43 for Riyadh. A bit of rain for Sana'a, and from Mecca, Port Sudan, all the way to Khartoum, do expect really hot conditions. The temperatures are into the lower 40s. And you see the red shade also towards North Africa. We're expecting hot weather then. Don't be fooled by this. Just looks like a bit of moisture moving into the central parts over West Africa, but it's still going to be quite dry. The only chances of rainfall are towards Senegal, as well as along the coastal parts into Liberia and definitely over the Togo regions as well as over Nigeria. You should expect a bit of rain there. Jamena will reach a maximum of 37 degrees. Sunny skies are expected into Algiers over the northern parts, but the rest of West Africa should remain slightly cloudy, albeit a bit of showers too at some areas such as Lagos and Abidjan. Definitely for Accra as well, a bit of rain is expected there. Maximum temperatures along those parts are into the upper 20s, so it's a bit of a normality going there. Every temperature is quite stable. Niamey is at 36 degrees, and as I mentioned, Jamena still extremely hot. The temperature is very close to 40 degrees. Weather at sabc.co.za, that's where you can reach the SABC weather desk, and there's the rest of the details there. Otherwise, stay tuned. There'll be more weather later.
Keeping you up to date with business developments.
There's no shortage of money in the system. There's a shortage of implementation capacity to actually get things done.
Always on point with news of the day.
May has promised radical social and economic reforms, fueling speculation over the future of current senior figures.
On the ball every time with all sports codes.
The Joburg side already have a quarter-final at home, and a victory against the Argentines will ensure home semi-final.
Accurate weather updates after every bulletin. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
A conscious move from being a street kid to being a barrister of note.
Keep on praying for me to make a better life.
A creative application of the mind on an essential need, water in wheelbarrow containers.
How about if we were to come up with an idea of an enclosed container that sits on top of the frame of a wheelbarrow?
With the sharing of resources, a boy with Russell Silver syndrome receives medication.
The fact that you just said to me, well, you're covered for next month, that's amazing.
So that's the medication.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
Well, they haven't.
No, they haven't.
Do you know why?
Well, we didn't know. Firstly, we'll ask.
I can tell you.
Why?
They say you're selling out.
Why?
Well, I guess that's a question you need to engage them.
Why would the African Union try and separate human rights and women's rights?
Women's rights are indeed human rights.
So we need to be asking ourselves, what kind of society are we? What kind of family structures do we have where fathers turn on their daughters?
If a policeman, is seen to be accessing psychological services, couldn't that be seen as a sign of weakness?
People are waiting for somebody to discover them.
Absolutely.
And that's not everybody's story, am I right? I mean, there's so many of us who can be the best and stars, but you can't sit there and wait for somebody to say, I think what you're doing is great.
Which are so different to his past.
I really wish I could say thanks to him. And mind you, I'm the man. I make coffee and I'm proud of it.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News channel.
If you look at artists, they've got one of the abilities to either form new conversations, they can paint a picture of a country, they can paint a picture of a mindset of a country.
The Cape Town-based ballet dancer recently won at the 2016 and 2017 Rolex Mentor and Prodigy Arts Initiative.
South African hip-hop right now is sitting at a level where it's Mgutu, Yippee and Roll Up. When you put them all in one room, you actually have like the ultimate super South African fan.
And you're watching Trends, do not go anywhere, stay right there.
Catch Trends for that 1 hour weekly dose of arts and entertainment news every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Technology is changing the way we live our lives, like how people on the continent use mobile money to pay for many goods.
It's good because it has helped me save.
And Africans are now developing new online content.
Cameroonians would ask us on social media when the game would come out.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media landscape. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
This is the Newsroom Show. Very good morning to you. It's just gone 10 o'clock. Time for us to give you another update as we count down to midday, of course, by the time the show goes off air. Kendall Mahamati is here on the sports desk. Rene Vest is back with us to bring you all the latest news and developing stories from around the country. Of course, we've been asking you a question today that, well, with regards to racism, a scourge that is not going away in South Africa. Should racism be criminalised in this country is what we've asked you. And Rene, we've had quite a lot of traction around the issue of racism here in South Africa. Let's have a look at some of the tweets that have been coming in.
This one coming in from V says, this is a disrespect to humanity. Yes, racism must be criminalised.
Right, Bongiseni Nyati reckons Newsroom, definitely, racism must be criminalised and punishable. It's a cancer that seeks to undermine the spirit of humanity in society.
Very well said. And this one from Lekasa says, truly racism must fall. Racism should be criminalised. Those promoting racism should be arrested, finish and klaar.
Very motivational, I tell you. Michael Mditra says, why nowadays bad things are embarking at school? The future of our generation and the Western province. Yeah, no, it's very motivational. Lots of people with lots to say.
Of course, there is, well, they're talking about the school. This is where the latest, the Pretoria girls are in the crosshairs of society because of what's been going on. That's our question of the day. Keep it coming. Should racism be criminalised here in South Africa? Of course, moves are afoot at a governmental level to look at this issue particularly. But there's a lot of other news going on in the world. Let's go to Rene to give us that update.
The Gauteng MEC for Education, Panyaza Lesufi, will this morning visit the Pretoria Girls High in Tshwane to investigate reports of racism at the school. President Jacob Zuma is positive that the Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Nairobi will increase investments in Africa. And government and water experts are on a quest to find solutions to South Africa's water crisis. Well, let's go over to Kendall Makamate, who has your sports update.
Rene, thank you very much. This is what's coming up in the sports. Good morning to you. This is what we have on this beautiful Monday morning.
Chance offered again and taken this time. Vernon Philander gets the breakthrough.
Redemption is within the grasp of the Proteas as they look to choke the life out of the visiting New Zealand batting lineup.
Still Tau, still going Tau. Plays the ball through now. Kama Billiard in the penalty area.
And Mamelodi Sundowns show their pedigree as the top-ranking team in Africa as they crush SuperSport United 3-1 in their MTN 8 quarter-final.
Of course, to get the win today on this special track. You know, it's a legendary track. But Lewis, starting from the back, of course, made it a lot easier this weekend.
Even as Nico Rosberg won the Belgian Grand Prix, it was Lewis Hamilton's day as he rode to third from the back of the grid to keep his lead in the championship race.
And third from the very back of the field, Lewis Hamilton. Well, that has got to be a special podium to have worked his way through the order and to have limited the damage effectively in terms of the World Championship.
Tell you what, chock-a-block weekend that we've had over the last few days, but we'll bring you all that and more later on in the Sports Bulletin.
Well, thank you, Kendall. Now, the Gauteng MEC for Education, Panyaza Lesufi, will this morning visit the Pretoria Girls' High in Tshwane to investigate reports of racism at the school. Black pupils at the school are allegedly discouraged from having hairstyles such as afros, dreadlocks and braids. Pupils claim they are also banned from speaking their mother tongue, among other things. Lesufi says he received a petition last Friday. Now, for more on this, let's go over to Evan.
Yeah, of course, we've been asking you the question around racism and should it be criminalised here in South Africa. Now, a panel of thinkers and decision makers led the discussion on whether racism should be criminalised. Many speakers agreed that there should be punishment for racist behaviour, but they raised concerns if it would be a viable solution to combat it in the long run. All these were discussed at Criminalising Racism Conference, organised by the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, the Canadian Embassy and the Institute for the Advancement of Journalism. Now, to look into the issue of racism closely, in our studio we are joined by Nishan Balton, who's the Executive Director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Very good morning to you, Nishan. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning and thank you.
Before we go as to what the discussions were at the conference, of course, the very latest one now is the issue that we have at the Pretoria Girls' School, the march being planned there. The Panyaza Lesufi, the Gauteng MEC for Education, is expected to make an appearance there. How do you view this kind of incident or this kind of uproar at the school?
I think it's part of the ongoing areas of transformation that still needs to be focused on. Schools like this have developed a particular ethos and an understanding of what they describe as academic excellence. Included in their notion of excellence is dress and attire and language, and which does not conform to current-day South Africa and its practices. So in a sense, what you have here is an attempt to assimilate black students into a particular culture, and many would define it as white culture, and you're finding resistance to that today.
Yeah.
At a time when I think South Africans are at a point where they will not tolerate being told how they need to dress and how they need to speak, but would accept that there are norms and standards that need to be adhered to. It's those norms and standards that I think that are under scrutiny in the school. And that it has come to a point where learners feel that they are victimized and discriminated because of their language and their dress is a very serious issue. What it does point to is that our schools do need a national approach on how to deal with racism. We do need a national policy on racism or anti-racism for schools. And that is something that we have raised with the Department of Basic Education almost a year ago. We have put forward to them drafts around what such a policy could in fact entail. And it's something that we will be putting forward to the Gauteng MEC as well.
Now, at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, fighting racism is one of the things that you really focus on. Why is this fight against racism, do you think? Why is it so critical for you, but also so critical for South Africa right now?
Given where we come from, racism is entrenched in the DNA of this country. Whilst we might have gotten rid of the legislative part of that racism, the material, the psychological, the behavioral aspects of much of that apartheid racism prevails today. And that is why we need to do much, much more to eradicate it, and eradicate it very, very fast, particularly from public spaces such as our schools and universities and playing fields as well.
Now, we're asking our viewers the question, of course, today on screen. It's, should we criminalise racism in South Africa? You've just had the conference. Tell us about the outcomes of the conference and then give us your view on this question.
I think the seminar agreed that racism must be dealt with, that there should be no space for racists in South Africa. Racism must be something that we do not tolerate. Where there were differences of opinion is what form punishment should take for people who are in fact found guilty of racism. So you have an approach by the Human Rights Commission, for example, where you would have community service where people are found guilty or admit to being racist would have to undergo community service as such. Then you have other instances where people have gone to the Equality Court and have been given fines. I think we're looking at this seminar, what kind of sanction actually gets a racist to acknowledge their wrongdoing and ultimately commit to changing their form of behavior and attitude. There is a strong view that in the current legislative work that is being done by the Department of Justice, looking at hate speech in particular, whether racism should not be added to that body of what is termed hate speech. Judge Mwepe, I think, pointed out that once we go down that road, it's very, you can entangle the legal fraternity in a minefield of work which is not very easy to define.
He also spoke at the conference about the threat to national unity.
I think the judge was pointing out that unless we collectively as a country deal with issues of racism, it can threaten the very fabric of our society. Now, if you look at the school issue, for example, it is going to polarize people in this country as much as Sparrow and all others have done. And that's simply because we tend to deal with racism on an issue-by-issue basis, and which is why we're very happy that the Department of Justice is underway to finalize the National Action Plan to combat racism, because that will give us the broad-ranging set of tools and framework to now start dealing with racism in all its different manifestations.
Racism in general, all of us in South Africa, do we have a problem with perception when it comes to racism?
Very much so. You know, the attitudes and prejudices are still very much ingrained with us. We've only had 22 years of democracy. The effects of living in group areas and living in Bantustans and living separately is still very much part of us today.
Yeah.
And it's going to take much, much more to overcome those social divisions and social barriers. But it requires work. It requires work in our schools, in our places of worship, in our places of work. And ultimately, it requires ongoing investigations into what are the best tools and remedies to deal with those who are outwardly racist, and how do we condemn that, and what forms of punishment and sanction must be meted out.
The solutions going forward, what did the conference put forward? What are the solutions for South Africa, short, medium and long term, if one can put it like that?
One is firstly acknowledging that this is a huge problem. I was recently at the FW de Klerk conference on Friday. And at this conference, basically, one of the key conclusions there was that racism is not a huge problem in this country. Now, if you look at the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation in their study, racism is a huge problem coupled with social attitudes which further divides people in South Africa. So that's the first thing, acknowledging this is a problem. Secondly, looking at the root causes of racism and racist behavior, which are linked to issues of inequality, issues of separateness in South Africa. And that requires a comprehensive program to tackle. Part of that comprehensive attempt to tackle it is in a national action plan which is underway. Secondly, it does require that we look...
You're talking about social cohesion?
Well, more than social cohesion. It's also social action. Social action to overcome these divisions and to tackle it. In the anti-racism network, we say that there are 4 basic things that we need to do. We need to learn about racism. We need to talk about it. We need to speak out against it when it occurs. And we need to act against it where and when we find it, in our individual spaces as well as our public spaces. We think if those 4 things becomes the way in which all South Africans respond to racism, then we're not only dealing with it at an individual level, but also at the institutional level, where in which much of the racism that South Africans experience is coming to the fore. This school is an example of institutionalized racism and what needs to be done to tackle it.
Criminalizing it, it might be tough, as some people might say. Even the speakers at the conference agreed that something needs to be done, but they varied or differed in their opinion as to what. Criminalizing it, would that be the first step?
No, I actually think that my personal view is that we're going to find it very difficult to criminalize unless we're talking about racism that transcends into hate speech.
Yeah.
There, I think that the criminalizing it will become very, very, very easy. There are current court cases before the equality courts and so forth have paved the way in that regard. But where it becomes attitudinal racism, it's going to be very difficult to prosecute and to convict. But the fact that we're having this discussion nationally, I think, is very important, because through this discussion, I think we'll begin to draw the lines about what it is that we ultimately won't tolerate and what is it that we think we can tolerate and deal with and hopefully rehabilitate people who have those particular views. So we'll draw the lines in terms of how far we can go and what we can tolerate as a society. It's an important discussion. I think that it's not yet conclusive. The process of discussion itself will throw out the range of possibilities on how to deal with it in terms of criminalizing.
Nishan, thank you very much for joining us today. That's the Executive Director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation here in South Africa, Nishan Bolton. We're talking about the question of the day. And let's put that question on the screen one more time for you. If you've just joined us, we're asking the question, should racism be criminalized in South Africa? Now, with our history, some would say that it should be a no-brainer, but there are many different aspects and different scenarios that needs to be considered. At SABC Newsroom is where you can send us our views. Let's go back to the news desk now for more news.
Thank you very much, Eben. President Jacob Zuma is positive that the Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Nairobi will increase investments in Africa. He says more than 70 agreements were concluded and the summit provided a win-win situation for both Africa and Japan. Japan has pledged billions to improve infrastructure on the continent.
While South Africa is Japan's largest trading partner in Africa, President Zuma was clear that the continent is working under a policy of leave no country behind.
Since Japan, like many, are interested in terms of investing in Africa, etc., that should be, in a sense, structured in a way that all countries are able to benefit. We are able to raise the issues collectively, particularly when it comes to bigger kind of projects.
Zuma pointed out that Japan's growing investments in infrastructural development in Africa is one of the immediate gains from TICAD, indicating that this will see increased free movement of persons and goods across borders. South Africa is championing the North Corridor project, which links East, West and the Southern African regions.
We want the network that is going to enable the goods and people of the continent to move quicker and faster.
Zuma, however, says there is need to balance trade between Japan and Africa.
There should be an important percentage that is almost built in the investment in terms of joint ventures, so that the interactions benefits both.
The two-day TICAD summit came to a close on Sunday. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Kenya.
The Southern African Development Community will meanwhile host its 36th Ordinary Summit of Heads of State and Government in Mbabane, Swaziland. The meeting starts tomorrow and will end on Wednesday. President Jacob Zuma arrived last night. 15 SADC member states, including the SADC Executive Secretariat, will attend.
The summit will receive a progress report on the Secretariat's activities, proposal and challenges. Discussions have already taken place on how SADC can help grow economies and hasten development in Southern Africa. Beneficiation is seen as key.
Because if we don't, you will have processed and finished goods only coming from one country, unfortunately South Africa. If we work together and implement on that, we think it will take us a long way.
During the last SADC summit, Zimbabwe cautioned against exporting raw materials.
If we continue as exporters of raw materials, we are sure to remain trapped in the jaws of underdevelopment, while those who add value on our behalf flourish at our expense.
International Affairs Minister Maitenkwana Mashabane emphasized the need to continue with the implementation of Zimbabwe's resolution at the summit last year, which focused on the region's industrial strategy. Infrastructure, another predicament SADC is faced with in its power and transportation sectors. The summit will also take stock of the conflicts within the region.
We do have issues, as you have said, in the DRC. We still have outstanding matters or issues in Lesotho.
The President, who is the current chairperson of SADC, will give the keynote address and hand over the SADC chairperson's badge to the incoming chairperson. Lehana Tsotetsi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The South African Communist Party is calling on the ANC to bring its consultative conference forward. The SACP also came out strongly in defense of embattled Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. The party held its Central Executive Committee meeting in Kempton Park on Gauteng's East Rand over the weekend.
Walking shoulder to shoulder on the local government election campaign trail, the SACP aggressively canvassed voters to back the ANC in the August municipal vote. The election results therefore came as a bitter disappointment, with the ANC losing control of key metros, Johannesburg, Tshwane and Nelson Mandela Bay.
We urge the ANC to convene a non-elective consultative conference. Under this, and in this general context, the SACP has taken note of calls by the ANC Youth League for an early ANC National Elective Conference. We are also aware that the ANC Youth League is being used by others to test the waters in this regard. While any decision on the timing of an ANC National Conference must, of course, be made by the ANC itself, the SACP is firmly of the belief that the motivation for this call is entirely factional.
The Communist Party has raised concerns over an ANC-NEC statement that pointed out that the ANC takes collective responsibility for poor performance in the elections. Nzimande has raised concerns over the Hawks' handling of the Pravin Gordhan SARS rogue unit investigations. Dumalo Mohlaudi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Speaking earlier on Morning Live, ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte responded to the discussions at the SACP's conference as well as other issues.
I think the issues raised by the SACP arising out of the Central Committee meeting are best placed before the ANC in a bilateral, where we can all clear out what are perceptions and what are really facts. First of all, I think the idea that a question or allegations made against the Minister of Finance by the Hawks are politically motivated seem not to have any basis in fact. And the point is that we need to separate things out. Firstly, the allegations made against the minister arise out of his job as the Commissioner of SARS and not currently has anything to do with his job as Finance Minister. It's the same person, yes, but remember that the President appointed someone that he has complete faith and trust in as a Minister of Finance, had appointed him to COGTA before that because he trusted him, and brought him back to finance because he trusted him. So the nuance that somewhere, somehow, this is politically motivated and that the hand of the President is involved in this appears to be a concoction that is leading to having the country blame the President for whatever the allegations are that the Hawks are making against the Minister of Finance. Ivan Pillay and Van Lochenberg and Piet Ritchie did the right thing. They went to the Hawks, they went to hear the allegations, and we don't know what they responded to. The Minister of Finance chose not to. He chose instead to mobilize civil society in a manner that is really unacceptable, to give the impression that he as an individual is under attack by the ANC. And honestly speaking, that is actually not factual.
The ANC Youth League in KwaZulu-Natal has lobbied for AU leader Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma to take over from President Zuma as ANC president, while the SACP came out guns blazing, attacking the ANC leadership. All this at the funeral service of ANC Youth League leader Nolani Ngobo and SACP's Nontsikelelo Blose at the weekend.
A moment to bid farewell to a fallen hero. But the service quickly turned into a political rally, with some lobbying for their preferred candidate for the ANC leadership positions, as well as attacking alliance partners.
As we go to this early conference, once they open it, we will nominate a female to be the president of the ANC. There are so many women in the ANC. But we would like to say that Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma tops the list.
The Ngobo family says it wants justice, not bloodshed.
I plead to the Lord to help us not to die for comradeship, but go forward with service delivery. I plead with you not to use guns because they won't help us.
About a kilometer away, another funeral. SACP's local leader, 44-year-old Nontsikelelo Blose, was gunned down last Sunday. Leaders here pointed to political divisions.
The issue here in Shanga is a political issue which needs to be resolved by the leadership of ANC and SACP.
Current ANC challenges played itself out.
The ANC national, provincial and the regional leadership generally shows little collective willingness or capacity to deal decisively with these issues.
For Blose's family, her death is a huge loss.
Nontsikelelo was a woman on the outside, but had the strength of a man. She did everything not only for her family, but also for community.
Both parties have called on police to arrest those responsible for the deaths. Ayanda Mhlongo, SABC News, Njalo.
Government and water experts are on a quest to find solutions to South Africa's water crisis. This year's World Water Week takes place in Sweden. It brings together various international stakeholders who will discuss Earth's water challenges under the theme Water for Sustainable Growth.
South Africa is a water-scarce country with lower than average rainfall. As the effects of global warming become more apparent, causing dam levels to drop, communities are left to bear the brunt. More water restrictions are expected in the coming week.
The restrictions are bordering on particularly the industries, the major water users. Secondly, it is to our big municipalities that are also using water and have a high level of water loss that they can account for.
Local stakeholders are meeting with their international counterparts to engage in issues relating to the global water crisis.
Out of this World Water Week, one of the things that we want to really, as the water family from South Africa, want to really promote, it's about partnership, and that partnership looking at sharing of human capital resources, looking at better use of financial resources, but make sure that all solutions are informed by research and innovation because of the realities of climate change.
World Water Week takes place in the Scandinavian country. The conference attracts thousands of water stakeholders, each trying to find solutions to keep the taps running. Hasina Gori, SABC News, Stockholm, Sweden.
Well, that's your top news for this hour. It's time now to take a break, but stay tuned because we will be continuing the discussion on criminalizing racism after this.
Now,
This is Trends, of course, your one-stop serving of all that's juicy and trending in the world of entertainment and showbiz. My name, of course, is Refil Wemwilo.
I'm Dr. Sello Mutaung, and this is Our Talk.
A very good morning and welcome to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jolly.
My name is Dumile Matters.
My name
is Mpho. What time is it? It's question time.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, amid growing public discontent over racist incidents here in South Africa and calls for legislation to criminalise racist acts, civil society organisations and politicians have warned of a long and arduous road before such legislation will ever see the light of day. Law will not only change people's attitudes overnight, but it will certainly help to clamp down on overt displays of racism. However, several legal experts have warned that such legislation would have to be thoroughly tested and that it would be as long as 2 decades before it would come to pass. Now, for more on this particular issue and others around racism, in our Pretoria studios, we are joined by Professor Lesiba Tefo from the University of South Africa. Very good morning to you, Professor. Thank you for joining us on Newsroom.
Good morning to you and to the listeners.
Professor, the latest incidents is there in the capital where you're at, the Pretoria Girls High School, where there are issues around the management of the school, if one can call it that. I want to ask you specifically about this. Have schools and school governing bodies in particular, have they become the last bastion of apartheid where schools can independently decide what legal framework or what framework they implement for learners at schools?
As a parent, I'm the first to say, let's not be quick to take refuge into racism when rational discourse and engagement becomes too much for us to sustain. There has to be norms and values in any school, in any organization, in any institution, including the first institution, which is the family. I would be the last one to say there should be a schools without rules. And I'm one of those who would say, indeed, right, the schools should have a modicum of rules that at least resonate with what the society expects and the people can afford. If you talk about weaves, which is not a debate I'm interested in, all I'm saying, don't make young girls in particular vulnerable to the thugs and to the blessers out there. Let school children be school children. They will be adults. They will be given room, right, to realize themselves when they have matured and they have the resources to do so. But let school children be school children, and let's take politics out of it. The schools must be allowed to run schools as they did yesterday, as they will do in the future.
Okay, you talked as a parent. I want to talk to you then as a parent first before we continue this. My son is in high school. He's a football player at the Wits Academy. They are not allowed to take a soccer ball onto the school premises. And they are not allowed to play soccer during break time at their schools. More worrying, soccer is not offered as an extramural or as sport at the school, whereas rugby is celebrated and all the finances of the school is being put behind this particular sport. How should I then view that as a parent?
I wouldn't look at it as racism. I maintain and I will sustain this argument in my publications and in my discourse. It's an easy escape route when we fail to engage, right? Why do we look at it as racism? It's unacceptable. I don't align myself to that. My sons are also playing rugby, but there are instances when they are unhappy and I'm willing to engage and to debate. But I'm always wary to label such incidents as racist or racism.
What do you make, Professor, of the plethora of incidents, racist incidents, name-calling the like, we've seen via social media and mainstream media in South Africa in the last year alone?
They are abominable, and we should condemn them in the strongest terms possible. And where legislation can be invoked, so be it.
Is it then time, you say, for us to criminalize racism, and what would that process look like, would you say?
As a senior student of philosophy, I can argue that you can't legislate against attitudes. But you can criminalize criminal conduct, informed, driven, and indeed perpetrated by those who hold racist attitudes. So we have to make a distinction between criminal conduct informed by racist attitude and racist attitude as attitudes, because there is very little you can do about them. 20 years ago, we started this debate. Now we are 22 years into a new democracy. God willing, I can assure you, in the next 20 years, you and I could still be debating this. You cannot legislate against attitudes, but you can influence attitude through education, religious discourse, through creation of job opportunities, preaching the values that underpin the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, namely integration, reconciliation, social cohesion, and nation building.
Are these working, I ask you?
To some extent, they do. Remember, for me as a philosopher, I can tell you, racism is a human condition. We are not going to eradicate it, but we can work, and we should work towards its eradication or elimination. But it's an ideal, I say, that you and I will never realize its elimination in our lifetime. It was there with you from the start of humanity, and it will be there. But what we are called upon to do is to contend with it through legislation, religious discourse, family education, and all other means. But if you tell me that you would hope that it will be eliminated completely, I'm sorry, it is not how human beings are constructed. Their DNA is different.
Yeah.
America is more than 300 years old in this. Britain is more than 300 old in this, and they are still discussing racism. You and I, we are hardly 22 years in this, so we are still beginners. We are novices in this regard.
So, as a professor and a learned man and a philosopher, you believe that the human condition is such that we are predisposed genetically to racism, and we should just deal with it from that perspective.
I'm saying it is a human condition that we are called upon to contend with it, to deal with it. And it's an ideal for which we should strive. Its elimination is an ideal. And I think it may sound impolitic or inappropriate or less politically correct to speak this language. But I should, as a scholar, maintain this because research will attest to that. You and I know the black Americans today, they will still tell you about racism. And it is there, live and kicking. And they have been 3 years into this, and they've been debating this. I'm saying I want to be part of the group to work towards its eradication. But if I were to say unequivocally, tomorrow we can eradicate it, then I will be misleading the nation. But I want to be part of the team that wants to work towards its eradication, knowing that it will never, ever be eradicated.
We are on the same team then, Professor. I'm happy to have you on the team. What is the first step for us then on this team that wants to work to eradicate this scourge that's causing so much pain? And it's not just a white-black thing. All parties and all groups in South Africa have made themselves guilty to some form of racism. What is the next step for all of us then?
I appreciate the last two statements, because there is a temptation to think that only white people or people of European descent can be racist. I've heard my people trying to condemn racist attitudes and practices, right? Using racial categories themselves. And then you realize, now, who's the racist here? Although it manifests itself in different ways, because I can hear a black man says, a black man can never be a racist. And I say, you still have to read a lot and to learn a lot about the universe. But what can we do? Education, education, education. Starting with the first university of life, which is the family.
Yeah.
And let religious discourses also be permeated by norms and values that underpin our Constitution. Let us recite silently those values that live there. Let's live and be the embodiment of those values that are enshrined in our Constitution. To the extent possible, let's legislate, knowing that legislation can influence conduct. But we know when it comes to attitude, it's a different matter. But I have no doubt legislation will influence, will make an impact. So to the extent possible, let's talk about legislation. But as things stand right now, I know, as you do, that there is sufficient common law to deal with certain actions. That we are not winning doesn't mean we must think that if we come up with a legislation, we say anti-racist legislation. Remember in 2001, there was a conference, a global conference, World Conference against racism. And now 16 years down the line, you and I are still discussing that. But I say it was not a wasted effort.
Yeah.
All these things put together will make a dent.
Thank you for joining us, Professor Lisiba Tefo from the University of UNISA. We're on the same team. It's nice to be with you, Professor. Yes, we all have a responsibility. He says we all have a responsibility in our own homes, in the parental home, to make a difference, and then taking that into every sphere outside of life. Of course, we asked the question today, should racism be criminalized? That's a question we ask of you. And yes, a lot of you share the views. Let's have a look at what are some of the latest comments that have been coming in. Adolf Nache says, Newsroom, yes, racism must be criminalized, because if we're not, we will continue to have these incidents and we will always talk. Yes. Jean-Claude Muyamba says, Newsroom, racism is a negation of other people's right of humanity. All people find guilty of such behavior must be named and shamed. Jean-Claude, in the time of social media, you will be named and shamed. Impilo Kumalo says, Newsroom, I think it's difficult to criminalize racism, and the same goes with xenophobia. A lot must be done to bring people together. Government is doing our bit. Civil society groups are doing this bit. This one from Jean-Claude Yates again. He says, Newsroom, just like rape and genocide, racism must be criminalized. This will serve as a deterrent to potential racist criminals, says Jean-Claude. Now, those are some of your views coming in. Keep it coming. We're asking you the question, should racism be criminalized? Yes, it's a straight question. It's a fair question. Those are some of your views. Keep it coming at SABC Newsroom. Now let's take a look at the front pages from around the African continent this morning. Now we'll start in Nigeria, where the Daily Trust reports that Nigeria lost over 1.1 trillion naira in oil revenue in the last 5 months due to militant attacks on oil installations. Investigations in that country have shown. Then in Swaziland, the Swaziland Observer says, the Swaziland Observer, we missed it? Do we have it? No. Well, King Mswati III International Airport is currently under heavy security as heads of state arrive there for the Southern African Development Community's 36th Summit. Those are some of the headlines coming out of the African continent. Unfortunately, we couldn't show you all of those. We have the one in Zimbabwe. Let's have a look at the Chronicle. Yeah, the Chronicle reports that Zimbabwe's Human Rights Commission should stop being an armchair critic and have an appreciation of the situation on the ground before rushing to make conclusions. Political analysts and legal experts in the country said so yesterday. Now, those are some of your headlines from around the African continent. We've had some of your views with regards to racism and the issue of whether racism should be criminalized. After a short break, we're going to take a look at all the top sports stories from what was a very busy sporting weekend. Kendall Makamate will bring you all of those shortly. Don't go away.
increasing internet connectivity in Africa leads to an increased political discourse.
They do see social media as a threat to power.
People are also using technology in innovative ways to solve the continent's problems and create new content. And we have to deal with new problems that arise because of new technologies.
You end up losing your identity within the game.
On Network, we have Africa's technology, gaming and social media news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Good morning, welcome back. My name is Kendall Makamat and I've got your sports on Newsroom. And this particular weekend we had a cracker full of sports. From MTN8 to Rugby Championship, there was something for everyone. That the Boks lost their match is also something to talk about. And with me to discuss all of this is Jody Hendricks, SABC sports commentator and analyst. Jody, good morning. Thanks very much for coming through on this Monday morning.
Morning, Kendall.
First up, Jody, let's talk about what's actually topical right now. It's currently on the go. We've got a match where the Proteas are in a straight shootout test against New Zealand out in Centurion. They're looking very good.
Yeah, they looked good. The batting especially was a positive, I think, in the first 2 days. But in all fairness, the pitch did assist the batsmen. There was nothing really in it for the bowlers. I was at day one on Saturday, and I must say the Protea batsmen looked good. I was particularly impressed, obviously, with de Kock. De Kock, we got a good start with Stephen Cook, and that 100 partnership, opening partnership, was the first opening 100 partnership in 35 innings. So it shows you that there was definitely
35 innings.
35 innings, first time since 2011 that we had an opening test partnership. Things are looking good. I think the foundation was built there. Like I said, nothing in it for the bowlers. And if you look at New Zealand's bowling lineup, not really strike bowlers who were wicket takers, so they were always going to struggle, and that's why we saw most of the batsmen going on to get starts. Obviously, the big highlight was the standing captain Faf's 100, which I thought was probably the turning point in the match.
You know, I mean, I think you're right. He actually did stand out. A lot of people complaining a little bit about his block. They said some people were saying he was trying to show Jacques Kallis a thing or two about getting dot balls, but he did extremely well. But he also did this. Really, we must give credit where it's due. Yes, you said the pitch was a little lifeless, but taking the shine off the ball by de Kock and Stephen Cook, that's really what we need from our opening batsman.
And that's why I think the Proteas have been struggling, and in 2 years they went from the #1 test team to #7 at the moment, is because we didn't have a good foundation at the top, and we've been experimenting with how many players now, and finally I think these two could possibly be the long-term solution for the Proteas. Coming back to Faf, he got his 100 of 225 balls, so he certainly took his time, but I think it was needed in the context of the game. He couldn't go out there and just hit boundaries at will, because he wanted to build a solid foundation, and that's why the Proteas got the big total that they did within the first 2 days of this test.
Yeah, no, a lot of people also appreciative of what he was doing. We also had our seamers coming in, Vernon Philander and Dale Steyn, coming back from a very long layoff, and it's borne fruit because they're doing extremely well. They've kept the New Zealanders picked back.
Yeah, obviously all eyes were going to be on them making their comeback from their respective injuries. And also this takes a bit of the pressure off Kagiso Rabada, who we saw in the series against England was South Africa's standout performer, but now the veterans are back. They must set the example, and they haven't disappointed. It's only one test. They're still busy with their first innings, so let's see what they can come up with for the rest of the day.
All right, now we currently actually have the match going live right now out in Centurion. I'm going to ask our director to see if we can jump quickly into that match to see exactly what the scoring is looking like and what's happening out there, because we know that it was 60-3 around there a little earlier. We're actually looking at the live pictures now being brought to you by SABC in Centurion. What do you make of where it is New Zealand is standing now, 66-3 after 26 overs, trading by a whole 415 runs?
I think today is probably going to be their day. They need to bat out this day. They need to get a decent total. If they get bowled out cheaply today, they're asking for trouble. And South Africa, if they don't get anywhere close to 200, if they bowled out for 250, I think they can still maybe get a follow-on. And South Africa, with the pitch playing the way he did. Obviously, we said the first 2 days it was a batsman's paradise, but there will be something in it for the bowlers the last 2 days. So the last thing New Zealand wants today is to lose 7 wickets and having to bat again on this pitch.
I'm looking at Rabada going in there, and it seems like we're hopefully going to rekindle those glory days when we've got 3 world-class seamers taking wickets, taking out the top order, middle order, and mopping up the tail.
Yeah, the balance of the team has also been out a bit. Remember that we've got Algar, who just missed out on this test, and then also AB de Villiers that needs to come back, and it's going to be interesting to see if this team does well, who they're going to leave out to accommodate those 2 guys.
All right, now we're going to leave the box at what they're doing, and hopefully you're right. They do the job over the next couple of hours and or so. Now the box went all the way to Salta in Argentina. They had themselves a really rough time of it, and the Argentinians showed them a thing or two about how to play Test rugby.
Yes, they did. A lot of people, let's just put this into perspective as well, Kendall. A lot of people are blaming Alistair Coetzee and saying he's not a good coach. Problems with the Springboks has been coming for a while now. Last year we lost to Argentina, we lost to Japan, so it's nothing new. The problem is the quality of players that he's selecting, and obviously also the game plan. The game plan is the thing that disappointed me the most. There was no structure. They weren't in the game they played rugby for about 20 minutes out of the 80 minutes. The Argentinians dominated from the beginning. Also a couple of calls that went against the Argentinians. Otherwise, I think we would have seen a bigger total. And also, it showed us the importance of having a goal kicker who can kick the ball through the pole skin.
Take the chances.
We can't have a goal kicker at international level kicking at 60%, and then we're going to lose the game by 3 points. We need a goal kicker by 80-85% if we want to be competitive in matches. So the game plan, he's going to relook at the game plan and also the personnel. There's a couple of question marks I have around Francois Lowe, with Jaco Kriel being on the bench and being able to get us over the advantage line. I think he should be in the starting lineup. The centre combination of Damien Dalinde and Lionel Mapu is not working for me. One of them's got to go. I think probably Damien, bring in a Johan de Jong maybe. Also Rowan Janse van Rensburg at the Lions, who's been phenomenal this season. Those are some of the things. And then obviously he's going to have to decide what he's going to do with Elton Jantjies. Elton struggles. If the pack struggles, Elton struggles. And our pack is not dominating at the moment.
Oh, no, quite a lot, quite a mouthful you've given us to chew on and think about, because there was a lot to be said about the team itself and how they performed. And I think we'll leave it at that for now with regards to the box. I think we do need to give them a little bit of slack. We want them to play what's in front of them. We want to give them a chance to actually not just evolve, because this is not an evolution. He's trying to create a revolution, and we should give him a chance to do that. But I think what you said, we should definitely take note about the personnel.
My final thought, it's not going to get easier. We're facing Australia and New Zealand in the next couple of weeks, and that's going to be much tougher than Argentina.
I can imagine. Now let's go through quickly to the other action of the weekend. MTN 8, the two Soweto Giants were knocked out over the weekend. Pirates gone, Chiefs gone. Who would have said it's just Sundowns that are left in the running?
Yeah, and Wits doing all the damage, knocking out Pirates. And the big talking point, obviously, is the Pirates goalkeeper. If you have somebody like Brilliant Skozwaya on the bench, why not use him? He's got international experience. But from what I hear, Mushin Ertugrul is trying to get his players in. It was a bit of a personality clash with Brilliant. But Mushin, this will be a wake-up call for him. He's still new in the post. But, you know, when you're coaching one of the Soweto Giants, Kendall, there's no time
to learn.
You don't have time to settle. You've got to get the results. And losing to Wits in an MTN 8 game is not good enough. That's asking for pressure from day one. They had a good PSL game in the week, and then all of a sudden the wheels came off in this game. But also all credit to Wits and Gavin Hunt. Gavin Hunt, he knows how to beat the big teams.
Yeah, no, we talk about that. I mean, what happened to Kaizer Chiefs? Steve Kompela, apparently, from the latest stats, I believe, has had 15 competitive matches and a single win in those last 15 competitive matches. So he also has quite a lot, a massive mountain to climb that he's built for himself.
Again, you know, Kaizer Chiefs, the coach, that's how you get measured. You need the results, and if you're not getting the results, and he had a season to settle, so we can't say that he's new in the job. He's had time to settle, get his formation right. He let go a lot of quality players, brought in some youngsters that, you know, they're struggling at a big team like Chiefs. But I think the responsibility, all in all, it's going to be interesting to see the next couple of weeks and the next couple of games that they have, how that will play out. You know, Bobby Motaung, he doesn't need an excuse to fire a coach. So I think for Chiefs, the results are going to have to come their way for them to be a factor, be it in a cup game or be it in the PSL.
And in closing, let's talk about Sundowns. They're really living up to that role that they've got now as being top of the African pile, better than teams like TP Mazembe, Al Ahly, better than the Etoile du Sahels of this world.
You've mentioned a couple of big teams, and I think the person that needs the credit there is Pitso. He took the team a couple of years ago. He didn't win the league in his first team, but it was started a building process. Won the league in the second tier. Now they're the best team in Africa. Got some talented players. Don't take that away from Sundowns. They've got some phenomenal players. We can go through that, the Keegan Dollys of the world, you know. But I think in this instance, and that is where maybe Steve Kompela can learn something, is, you know, you have a building process, but then you need to get the results at some point, and 100%. This is what Pitso is doing. And I'm probably going to say it's early days still, but I think Sundowns is going to be a big factor in the PSL and in Cup games this season.
Last question, Kama Billiat, how long do you think he stays at PSL?
That's a difficult question. He's probably
20 seconds.
The flavour of the month. Money talks in soccer. Yeah. If there's a club with a big enough check,
37 million, I think they've put on his head.
He's going to go, yeah. But a fantastic player, Kendall, and also again credit to Pitso for guiding him and guiding his career that way, so that he can demand that kind of paycheck.
Very good. There you have it. Jody, thanks very much for coming through and helping us get an understanding of all the big things that happened this weekend. We didn't even get to talk about Lewis Hamilton, and he's an absolute force of nature. Thanks so much, Jody, for coming through. There you have it, Jody Hendricks helping us wrap up the weekend's sports. That's where we'll leave it for now. Up next, we have a look at the weather forecast. All right, no weather forecast. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to say thanks very much for having joined us for this bulletin. We're going to take a short break. When we come back at the top of the hour, we start again with more news.
Today provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge, breaking stories and crossing live for you. We follow business developments intensely. Experts and analysts tackle all challenging issues for you. We cover stories locally and abroad to keep you informed. We cover all sporting codes just for you. We are sure to give you weather to be ready for the day. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
If you look at artists, they've got one of the abilities to either form new conversations, they can paint a picture of a country, they can paint a picture of a mindset of a country.
The Cape Town-based ballet dancer recently won at the 2016 and 2017 Rolex Mentor and Prodigy Arts Initiative.
South African hip-hop right now is sitting at a level where it's Ngutu, Yippee and Roll Up. When you put them all in one room, you actually have like the ultimate super South African fan.
And you're watching Trends, do not go anywhere, stay right there.
Catch Trends for that 1 hour weekly dose of arts and entertainment news every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Well, they haven't.
No, they haven't.
Do you know why?
Well, we would know. Firstly, we'll ask.
I can tell you.
Why?
They say you're selling out.
Why?
Well, I guess that's a question you need to engage them.
Why would the African Union try and separate human rights and women's rights?
Women's rights are indeed human rights.
So we need to be asking ourselves, what kind of society are we? What kind of family structures do we have where parents, where fathers turn on their daughters?
If a policeman, is seen to be accessing psychological services, couldn't that be seen as a sign of weakness?
People are waiting for somebody to discover them.
Absolutely.
And that's not everybody's story, am I right? I mean, there's so many of us who can be the best and stars, but you can't sit there and wait for somebody to say, I think what you're doing is great.
Which are so different to his past.
I really wish I could say thanks to him. And mind you, I'm the man. I make coffee and I'm proud of it.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News channel.
We are one of the 22 high-burden countries.
and out of that we're number 6, following countries like India, China, and with huge population.
Cough, night sweats, weight loss and fever, and cough being the most important of those. So, and especially if the cough lasts for more than 3 weeks, then you really have to worry and get tested for TB.
The motivation is to affect behavior change, particularly with people who cough and who may be carrying the bacterium. So encouraging people to use their elbow.
For more on health, join your host Dr. Selo Motaung every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m.
It's just gone 11 o'clock. Very good morning once again. Yes, you've joined the Newsroom team. We'll be with you for the final hour. Kendall Makamati, myself, Evan Jensen, and of course, Rene West is with us on the news desk today. Yes, we've been asking you the question today. The question on screen right now. Should racism be criminalized here in South Africa? Let's take a look at some of your tweets with regards to this question.
This one coming from Jean-Claude, who says, racism is a negation of other people's rights of humanity. All people found guilty of such a behavior must be named and shamed.
Charlie Peterson says, Newsroom, yes, it is evil. Do something about it, please. It's almost 22 years after our freedom, says Charlie Peterson.
This one from Bungo Iseni Nati. He says, definitely racism must be criminalized and punishable. It's a cancer that seeks to undermine the spirit of humanity in society.
Mpilo Kumalo says, Newsroom, I think it's difficult to criminalize racism, and the same goes with xenophobia. A lot must be done to bring people together. Well, those are your tweets with regards to the question we've been asking you today, and that is, should racism be criminalized? We've had a whole lot of speakers. Send us your view at SABC Newsroom. We'd love to hear from you. As you see, we always put it up. And, well, we'd like to interact with your views, either on Facebook or on our Twitter page at SABC Newsroom. But, of course, very much one of our top stories today is around racism at a school. Let's go to Rene for some detail.
The Gauteng MEC for Education, Panyaza Lesufi, has arrived at the Pretoria Girls High in Tshwane to investigate reports of racism at the school. President Jacob Zuma is positive that the Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Nairobi will increase investments in Africa. And government and water experts are on a quest to find solutions to South Africa's water crisis. Before we get to that news, let's go over to Kendall Makamate, who has your sports update.
Renee, thank you very much. Good morning to you at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports in this hour.
Chance offered again and taken this time. Vernon Philander gets the breakthrough.
Redemption is within the grasp of the Proteas as they look to choke the life out of the visiting New Zealand batting lineup.
Still Tau, still going Tau. Plays the ball through now. Kamabiliad in the penalty area.
And Mamelodi Sundowns show their pedigree as their top-ranking team in Africa as they crush SuperSport United 3-1 in their MTN 8 quarter-final.
Of course, to get the win today on this special track. You know, it's a legendary track. But Lewis starting from the back, of course, made it a lot easier this weekend.
Even as Nico Rosberg won the Belgian Grand Prix, it was Lewis Hamilton's day as he rode to third from the back of the grid to keep his lead in the championship race.
Third.
from the very back of the field. Lewis Hamilton, well, that has got to be a special podium.
Right, now just to give you a quick update of what's happening at that test out in Centurion. A 79 for 3 is what New Zealand is on right now in the 29th over, trailing by 402 runs. More about all of that a little later in the Sports Bulletin, but for now, it's back to Renee Vest for the news.
Thank you, Kendall. The Gauteng MEC for Education, Panyaza Sufi, has arrived at the Pretoria Girls High in Tshwane to investigate reports of racism at the school. Black pupils at the school are allegedly discouraged from having hairstyles such as afros, dreadlocks and braids. Pupils claim they are also banned from speaking their mother tongue, among other things. Nasufi says he received a petition last Friday. Now, a panel of thinkers and decision makers led the discussion on whether racism should be criminalized. Many speakers agreed that there should be punishment for racist behavior, but they raised concerns whether this would be a viable solution to combat it. All these were discussed at Criminalizing Racism conference organized by the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Canadian Embassy and the Institute of Advanced Journalism. To look into the racism issue closely, earlier in our studio we were joined by Nishan Bolton, the Executive Director of Ahmed Kathrada Foundation.
Firstly, acknowledging that this is a huge problem. I was recently at the FW de Klerk conference on Friday. And at this conference, basically, one of the key conclusions there was that racism is not a huge problem in this country. Now, if you look at the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation in their study, racism is a huge problem coupled with social attitudes which further divides people in South Africa. So that's the first thing, acknowledging that this is a problem. Secondly, looking at the root causes of racism and racist behavior, which are linked to issues of inequality, issues of separateness in South Africa. And that requires a comprehensive program to tackle. Part of that comprehensive attempt to tackle it is in a national action plan which is underway. Secondly, it does require that we look...
You're talking about social cohesion?
Well, more than social cohesion. It's also social action. Social action to overcome these divisions and to tackle it. In the anti-racism network, we say that there are 4 basic things that we need to do. We need to learn about racism, we need to talk about it, we need to speak out against it when it occurs, and we need to act against it where and when we find it, in our individual spaces as well as our public spaces. We think if those 4 things becomes the way in which all South Africans respond to racism, then we're not only dealing with it at an individual level, but also at the institutional level, where in which much of the racism that South Africans experience is coming to the fore. This school is an example of institutionalized racism and what needs to be done to tackle it.
President Jacob Zuma has just concluded the 6th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, which will lead to an increase in investments across Africa. Speaking to the SABC, the president said, with Japanese and African companies having signed more than 70 agreements, the summit provides a win-win situation for both Africa and Japan. Our reporter Sarah Kamani reports.
South Africa is Japan's largest trading partner in Africa. Africa's second largest economy accounts for 1/3 of all Japanese exports to the continent.
Everything we do, we, for an example, spoke about the possibilities that are there in terms of the infrastructure that Africa is one on, that we would want Japan to participate, their companies to participate, so that we could therefore have the capacity to ensure that these infrastructure throughout, bridges or whatever, they're all moving. There's now not others that are not moving because the possibility of financing are not there. So those are the kind of things we're talking about.
During the just concluded TICAD-6 summit, the 2 countries sought to further trade relations between them.
We both agreed that there would be a particular Japan-focused desk on our side, and then there'll be a specific South Africa-focused desk on their side. So I think it's an indication that we are moving further forward in our relations.
During the summit, the World Bank and the Global Fund committed to invest $24 billion to accelerate universal health coverage in Africa. South Africa, which is already benefiting from training and human resource development from Japan, is keen to see that expand to the health sectors.
I was asking them in terms of human resources, can they take some of our people to train them in running the universal health coverage system, seeing that they've got more than 50 years experience on the system. And so the issue of human resources and technical support, they know how to run the system technically. Can they also help us so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel?
Keen to move to cleaner energy in a bid to reduce its carbon footprint, South Africa is now looking towards more sources of renewable energy, including partnering with Japan to expand its hydrogen fuel cell projects. During the meeting, Japan agreed to double the intake of South African students going to Japan for traineeship.
This is a program through which young graduates are able to go to Japanese universities, and they spend time linked to a university, so doing some graduate work, but also working in a Japanese enterprise in Japan. We've been sending small numbers of students, but we're now ramping up the number because we think it's an extremely beneficial program.
The TICAD process has been described as a win-win partnership between Japan and Africa, from human resource and infrastructure development to training young people in Japan and both at home. South Africa says it is already reaping the benefits of this partnership.
They were talking about a qualitative partnership where you see that it's not just 10% for the Africa and 90% for Japan.
With a high private sector participation than the previous TICAD summits, South Africa and indeed all African countries had more opportunities during this summit to speak directly to Japanese companies. Sarah Kemani, SABC News, Kenya.
The African Communist Party is calling on the ANC to bring its consultative conference forward. The SACP also came out strongly in defense of embattled Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. The party held its Central Executive Committee meeting in Kempton Park on Gauteng's East Rand at the weekend.
Walking shoulder to shoulder on the local government election campaign trail, the SACP aggressively canvassed voters to back the ANC in the August municipal vote. The election results therefore came as a bitter disappointment, with the ANC losing control of key metros, Johannesburg, Tshwane, and Nelson Mandela Bay.
We urge the ANC to convene a non-elective consultative conference. Under this, and in this general context, the SACP has taken note of calls by the ANC Youth League for an early ANC National Elective Conference. We are also aware that the ANC Youth League is being used by others to test the waters in this regard. While any decision on the timing of an ANC National Conference must, of course, be made by the ANC itself, the SACP is firmly of the belief that the motivation for this call is entirely factional.
The Communist Party has raised concerns over an ANC-NEC statement that pointed out that the ANC takes collective responsibility for poor performance in the elections. Nzimande has raised concerns over the Hawks' handling of the Pravin Gordhan SARS rogue unit investigations. Dumala Mohlaudi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Speaking earlier on Morning Live, ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte responded to the discussions at the SACP's conference as well as other issues.
I think the issues raised by the SACP arising out of the Central Committee meeting are best placed before the ANC in a bilateral, where we can all clear out what are perceptions and what are really facts. First of all, I think the idea that a question or allegations made against the Minister of Finance by the Hawks are politically motivated seem not to have any basis in fact. And the point is that we need to separate things out. Firstly, the allegations made against the minister arise out of his job as the Commissioner of SARS and not currently has anything to do with his job as Finance Minister. It's the same person, yes, but remember that the President appointed someone that he has complete faith and trust in as a Minister of Finance, had appointed him to COGTA before that because he trusted him, and brought him back to finance because he trusted him. So the nuance that somewhere, somehow, this is politically motivated and that the hand of the president is involved in this appears to be a concoction that is leading to having the country blame the president for whatever the allegations are that the Hawks are making against the Minister of Finance. Ivan Pillay and Van Lochenberg and Piet Ricci did the right thing. They went to the Hawks, they went to hear the allegations, and we don't know what they responded to. The Minister of Finance chose not to. He chose instead to mobilize civil society in a manner that is really unacceptable, to give the impression that he as an individual is under attack by the ANC. And honestly speaking, that is actually not factual.
ANC Youth League in KwaZulu-Natal has lobbied for AU leader Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma to take over from President Zuma as ANC president, while the SACP came out guns blazing, attacking the ANC leadership. All this at the funeral service of ANC Youth League leader Xolani Ngobo and SACP's Nontsikelelo Bloze over the weekend.
A moment to bid farewell to a fallen hero, but the service quickly turned into a political rally, with some lobbying for their preferred candidate for the ANC leadership positions, as well as attacking alliance partners.
As we go to this early conference, once they open it, we will nominate a female to be the president of the ANC. There are so many women in the ANC, but we would like to say that Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma tops the list.
The Ngobo family says it wants justice, not bloodshed.
I plead to the Lord to help us not to die for comradeship, but go forward with service delivery. I plead with you not to use guns because they won't help us.
About a kilometer away, another funeral. SACP's local leader, 44-year-old Nontsikelelo Bloze, was gunned down last Sunday. Leaders here pointed to political divisions.
The issue here in Shanga is a political issue which needs to be resolved by the leadership of ANC and SACP.
Current ANC challenges played itself out.
The ANC national, provincial and the regional leadership generally shows little collective willingness or capacity to deal decisively with these issues.
For Blose's family, her death is a huge loss.
Nontsikelelo was a woman on the outside, but had the strength of a man. She did everything not only for her family, but also for community.
Both parties have called on police to arrest those responsible for the deaths. Ayinda Mhlongo, SABC News, Njalo.
Government and water experts are on a quest to find solutions to South Africa's water crisis. This year's World Water Week takes place in Sweden. It brings together various international stakeholders who will discuss Earth's water challenges under the theme Water for Sustainable Growth.
South Africa is a water-scarce country with lower than average rainfall. As the effects of global warming become more apparent, causing dam levels to drop, communities are left to bear the brunt. More water restrictions are expected in the coming week.
The restrictions are bordering on particularly the industries, the major water users. Secondly, it is to our big municipalities that are also using water and have a high level of water loss that they can account for.
Local stakeholders are meeting with their international counterparts to engage in issues relating to the global water crisis.
out of this World Water Week, one of the things that we want to really, as the water family from South Africa, want to really promote, it's about partnership, and partnership. And that partnership, looking at sharing of human capital resources, looking at better use of financial resources, but make sure that all solutions are informed by research and innovation because of the realities of climate change.
World Water Week takes place in the Scandinavian country. The conference attracts thousands of water stakeholders, each trying to find solutions to keep the taps running. Hasina Gori, SABC News, Stockholm, Sweden.
For more on Gauteng's water situation, let's go over to Urban.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rene. Very good morning to you if you've just joined us. The Department of Water and Sanitation insists the current water shortages at feeder dams are due to the drought and could not have been planned for or avoided. The department issued a notice to Gauteng's big metros and municipalities to limit water use in urban areas by 15% and irrigation water by up to 20%. Now, to talk about the issue of water restrictions, in our studio we are joined by Professor Anthony Turton, who is the Water Management Centre at the University of the Free State.
Good morning to you.
Very good morning to you, Professor. Professor, before we get into the whodunit, what does the picture look like in Gauteng firstly, but nationwide with regards to our water situation?
South Africa is a drought-prone country. We are fundamentally water-constrained, one of the 30th driest countries in the world. And the way we built our economy in the past is learning how to manage droughts. That is an essential component of all of our water resource management. If you take the data coming out of the climate change scenarios, particularly El Nino events, there's a fairly substantial set of data going back as long as data has been measured on El Nino. It's shown an upward trend that suggests that we will have deeper El Nino events, more pronounced, more widespread in the future. So these are all normal elements that are planned for in water resource management.
The looming water crisis here in the Gauteng province, what does that mean for consumers? Or what does that picture look like?
Well, if we go back to the historic context of it, in the National Water Resource Strategy, which is the official government planning document, was published initially in 2000. During that document publication, it was announced quite clearly that based on the best available science, the Vaal water management area will be in deficit, if I remember correctly, of 788 million cubic meters by 2025.
Yeah.
So in the year 2000, we already knew it was going to be in deficit by a significant amount. Let's round it off to 800 million cubic meters of water. It was also known that as one of the key elements of managing that, we need to bring online phase 2 of Lesotho Highlands Water Scheme, and there were specific timelines and deadlines given for that. And if those were implemented, even if those were implemented without a drought, we would still be in some distress in the Gauteng area. So in other words, we're sailing very close to the wind. We have been for some time. It's kind of manageable, but we mustn't take too many unnecessary risks.
You've been quite critical about how the process has been managed. Was there a way of making sure that the drought did not make or have this effect on our dams here in the country?
Well, I'm not critical as an individual. I'm a scientist. I look at data, I look at facts. So I don't have any opinions of my own. I'm purely led by the data. The situation published in 2014, there was a very interesting paper that came out of the Water Research Commission that looked at the state of instrumentation in the Department of Water Affairs and in the Department of Environmental Affairs, rainfall gauging stations and streamflow gauging stations. And in a nutshell, this is once again internally available information, publicly available. It's peer-reviewed science. We have approximately as much capacity today as we had in the 1960s for the one, and in fact 1920s where we had for the other.
Yeah.
So in both of these sets of instrumentation, we've had a very fundamental failure of the systems. Now, it's those very instruments that tell you when the drought is coming.
Yeah.
So, for example, the ability to forecast drought, which is an essential part of strategic water resource planning in a drought-prone area, we need to be able to accept that droughts are normal, and therefore we have to cushion ourselves accordingly. So, with a breakdown of the systems, I call this a systemic failure. We have not seen the drought coming. Therefore, I believe it's spurious to say that suddenly it's caught us unawares.
Now, it's reported that dam levels, when they get to a certain level, when they drop to a certain level, the water becomes unconsumable. How far away are we from that, from those kinds of levels?
Well, okay, it's difficult to give a national figure, but let's just give a sort of theoretical situation. By virtue of the fact that a dam is generally a V-shaped entity, by the time you get to 50% of the dam, you've already lost more than half of your water because of the volume expressed as a function of the shape. So when you start getting to, let's say anything below 60%, but let's call 50% as a red line, it starts becoming very different because your dam water starts getting increasingly warm. At the moment, because of our dysfunctional sewage works, we are feeding significant flows of sewage into these distressed dams. Elevated temperature, elevated nutrients. We're now getting the blooming of bacteria, and it's those bacteria that start producing toxins that ultimately reduce the potability of that water. So the little bit of water that we've got, we are now increasingly unable to use by virtue of the fact that our management of our sewage systems is so unsatisfactory.
These restrictions that are coming, well, how are they going to affect consumers, and what should consumers be thinking about in the weeks to come?
These restrictions were known about before the municipal elections, and the way they're going to affect the consumer now is basically across the board. People are going to have to use less water. It's going to have quite significant effects for businesses and industry. And what concerns me is unplanned shutdowns of systems as systems fail. That is something that is very difficult to predict, but a very, very growing problem in South Africa at the moment.
In conclusion, the way forward, what would you like to see happen?
Well, I think we have to get back to the technocratic management of water. South Africa, for 350 years, has always been water constrained. We've actually done pretty well up to now. And we've done well by developing science, engineering and technology and letting those technocratic people get on with it without too much interference. I think that's what we have to do. We have to unleash the science, engineering and technology skills that they have in this country. And we have to just let them do their job, hire them for their technical skills and fire them if they don't perform up to scratch.
Prof, thank you for joining us, painting us the water picture, and it's not great. That's Professor Anthony Turton, from the Water Management Centre, the University of the Free State. Thank you for joining us here this morning. Yes, there's a looming water crisis, or not a looming water crisis. We're in the middle of a water crisis, and all of us should chip in and use less. Water restrictions are with us. Let's go to Renee Vest on the news desk for more.
Thank you, Eben. Well, on a lighter note, nominees for the South African Traditional Music Awards have been announced. The SATMAs also honoured SABC COO Hlaudi Moswaneng by naming one of its categories after him. The awards take place on the 1st of October in Richards Bay.
The awards celebrate heritage and culture, dovetailing with the SABC's campaign to promote local content. In May, it decided to play 90% local music across its 18 radio stations, a step embraced by many in the entertainment industry. And the SATMAs went a step further.
As from today, SATMA, we took a decision to honor Ubaba Moswaneng with one of the categories. Not during a period like SABC, but lifetime.
The SABC says it's committed to its transformation program.
I'm happy, but what is more important for me, I just came with this idea of 90%, not knowing that people of South Africa, they will be so excited, especially the artists themselves. I'm glad, and it's a SABC team. It's not about individual. I'm just leading the team.
Nominees say they are encouraged by the SABC stance on local content.
Actually honored to be recognized as a nominee in this country, and for my music to be put in this platform, and at this day and age in South Africa where there's a lot of transformation in the music industry.
The nominee of the Best Maskandi category, I'm going to do my best to win this.
Earlier, thousands, including maidens and musicians, paraded through the streets of Durban, celebrating the country's diverse cultures and heritage. Yugeshan Pillay, SABC News, Durban.
That's your top news stories for this hour. It's time now to take a break.
Technology is changing the way we do things, and social media is giving a voice to those who were once ignored.
That's what social media has given us, a place where we can be not only connected, but also be united.
On Network, we tell you about all of this, and your favorite entertainers tell us about technologies they can't live without.
My favorite piece of technology is an e-reader.
My favorite innovation has to be Bluetooth.
We have Africa's technology and social media news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Now, of course, in this hour, we're dealing with the issue of water restrictions in Gauteng. To take it forward here in Gauteng, the Department of Water and Sanitation spokesperson Sputnik Ratau says this year's drought has severely impacted water levels in the country's dams. Now, in our Pretoria studio, we are joined by Mr. Ratau, who is the national spokesperson of the Department of Water and Sanitation. A very good morning to you, Mr. Ratau. Thank you for your patience. You saw that we had Professor Turton a little bit earlier in the studio to give us his take. He says that we have always been a drought-stricken country, and that our water could have and should have been managed better despite the drought. What do you say to such an allegation, if one can call it that?
I think Professor Turton is quite correct that, as he put it correctly, that we are one of the 30 driest countries in the world. That in itself implies that we are receiving less than world average rainfall. And therefore, even if we, on our best dates or on our best times of the best amount of rainfall, we would still receive less than world average rainfall. And therefore, it implies that we would still receive, in essence, that amount of water that we have been able to utilize, and maybe in the best of times, been able to go through our dry winter season, not being under stress. But obviously that was at a time when we did not have a general drought, which implied that even with the less than world average rainfall, we still received well less of our own kind of rainfall that we would necessarily need for our own needs.
Mr. Ratau, just give us a quick idea. What does the picture look like, especially with the Vaal Dam system? Is it time for us to panic?
Well, the Vaal River system, as at our last count, as in last week, was at about 53%, which implies that for itself, compared to where we were last year at about 72.7 or something like that, it's a huge reduction. Are we in a state of panic? We are not yet at a state of panic, because when we look at it, we are still able to actually abstract that water, especially that our major water board, the Rand Water, would still be able to receive water from the Vaal Dam and from the Vaal River system itself. And therefore, for as long as we are still able to abstract water from the system and we are still able to get water for our use, we are not in that situation yet. What happened was that because of the state of the system itself, that is where the Acting Director General took a decision to say, let us look at the restrictions for the Vaal River system, which implied that our 3 metros, as well as Mohali City, which is one of our district municipalities, would then need to look at how to reduce consumption for domestic use by about 15%, as well as for agricultural use by about 20%, in order to ease into hopefully the late spring, early summer, where we are hoping that we can be able to receive the required rainfall.
Yeah, we hope that the rain is just around the corner. It seems as if we're just weeks away. But I want to ask you, I want you to tell us about the picture for Gauteng specifically with restrictions, if that is going to be the case, and then what's your message to consumers out there today?
Basically, the issue of the restrictions is meant to assist Gauteng to be able to weather the storm, for the lack of a better word, until we are able to get the rains. And therefore, if we work together as communities, as government, as our utilities, and adhere to those restrictions as recommended, we should be able to get into our summer rainfall season, still being able to abstract the necessary water that we need. And therefore, all we are saying is that let us adhere to those restrictions. Let us work together with our municipalities as per the restrictions that they would impose, so that we can be able to together enjoy the benefit of this scarce resource.
Are we going to see a time in the short term where punitive measures are implemented for those who don't adhere to restrictions?
Well, that is the idea behind the restrictions, that, you know, if we work together and work within those restrictions, there shouldn't be punitive measures. But obviously, you know, you always stand a chance that there will be one or two people or those entities or those industries that might just go on utilizing water like there's no tomorrow. So in that case, obviously, the municipalities will have to impose those punitive measures as they will see fit, in order for those people to feel the pain and probably come into line, so that we can all be able to go together on this trip towards ensuring that we have security of supply as we require.
Mr. Ratawa, thank you very much for firstly being so patient there in our studio in the capital, and coming through and to tell us what the picture looks like and what we should be doing. Sputnik Ratawa, thank you very much for joining us. That's the national spokesperson of the Department of Water and Sanitation. And as we reported a little bit earlier, we all have a responsibility, and there will be punitive measures implemented if you don't adhere to the restrictions. Moving on. This year marks the 20th edition of the Rhodes University Highway Africa Conference. Now, every year, the conference brings together media practitioners, scholars, journalists, and academics from across the African continent. This in an effort of having delegates discuss and look at ways to take the media forward. Now, under the theme, the Internet and the Media, discussions will look to see the significance of the Internet, interaction via the Internet, and the Internet as a form of communication. Now, our reporter, Iviwe Porty, is at the conference. She is with the director of Highway Africa, Chris Gaboato. But before you do the interview, Iviwe, just give us a quick idea of the conference and the expectation there today.
Well, good day, Eben, and welcome to Grahamstown, if I may say. As you've already alluded, you know, it's the 20th anniversary here at the conference. And I think, you know, basically it's to have journalists together, as well as all those media spheres and media companies, to come and discuss how to take journalism further, especially now that we have the internet. I mean, Eben, if you look at journalism now and how we depend on the internet to keep us linked to all different kinds of news stories and different kinds of countries, the internet definitely plays a huge role. And I think, you know, that's the significance of the theme this year as well. But we are going to definitely speak to Chris, you know, the director, who's going to tell us, you know, just a bit more in terms of speaking to the theme this year. Chris, how important is it for journalists and media industries to understand the importance of the internet moving journalism further?
Well, it's critical. You cannot survive anymore in the newsroom without some digital skills. Why it is so is that the nature of production of news has changed radically. But you also will find that the internet itself is affecting our business models. Where we used to have people read newspapers, those same people have moved now online. but the money has not followed us online. So we still have to produce the news, but no longer have the same money. So all we are trying to interrogate now is how do we generate resources, revenue, profits, as we run our media companies. So those are some of the issues we are trying to tackle at this 20th Highway Africa.
Chris, tell us, you guys have been, Highway Africa has been around for about 20 years now. I think it also marks, to look at the development there of journalism. How far have we come thus far, especially as South Africa?
Well, we have come way far. You will see that the South African media companies have really been innovative in terms of adopting, the internet as a technology. When we started off ourselves 20 years ago, it was precisely because this new technology had come, and we were wondering what would the internet do to journalism as a practice and to media as a business. So you'll find that the very first online newspaper in the whole of the continent was the Mail and Guardian, online, as it were. And other companies have followed suit, whether it's Time Media Group, with all sorts of digital strategies. Of course, we are still in a period where we are trying to find the solutions as to how do we make money online. But we cannot say that our people are not trying to find solutions to that. And that's part of the conversation that we are having at Highway Africa.
Thank you so much, Chris. Well, Eben, there we have it. It's not only, in terms of moving journalism forward, but also now to look at the challenges that the internet and media also bring to the journalism field, such as how do we make money while we are moving into a space where we need to go online, because people don't really have time to sit and buy the newspaper or read the newspaper, so it's easier to do things online. So I think most of the delegates will be speaking to that as well, in terms of how we then have a profitable media industry while we are online.
Yeah, thank you very much, Evie. We have very much an issue, I think, that all media houses are grappling with right now. How do we monetize this new world? How do we make sure that you pay for what we do? It's an interesting conundrum that all media houses have to come to terms with in the 21st century, if they are going to survive. That is the key question. Time for us to take another break now. I'm going to say goodbye. Kendall Mahamate will come back, give us our final sports update, and wrap the show. See you tomorrow. Bye.
From the moment you start your day.
My biggest question is how I got myself here on time. Yes, it's so early for a comedian, I gotta be honest.
We are there for you. We bring your morning into perspective.
As news breaks throughout the morning,
is an investment into the future of the airports company, but also the future of our children, the future of our country, the future of the transport sector.
We'll make sure that you get the full story.
Give us quality music.
Load shedding. Listen, this winter.
It's a thing of the past. And you can count on the weather team with expertise.
Join us live at 6 a.m. daily.
Good morning, welcome back. As Evan said, I'm back with the sports update to bring you to the end of the show. But before we get to that, how's about to listen to this, where the Absa Premiership champions, Mamelodi Sundowns, will take on the adventurous Chippa United in the semi-final of the MTN 8, and Bidvest Wits will tackle Cape Town City in the other semi-final. Chippa and Wits will be at home for the first leg of the semis on the weekend of the 10th and 11th of September, with the second leg scheduled to be played a week later.
Kaizer Chiefs and the Orlando Pirates are out of the MTN 8 tournament after losing their quarter-final matches to Cape Town City and Bidvest Wits respectively. Amakhosi suffered their second consecutive loss in 1 week following a 2-1 defeat away to Wits in the Absa Premiership match on Tuesday night. Pirates goalkeeper Felipe Ovono, whose blunder led to Golden Arrows' goal on Wednesday night, had another bad day in the office on Saturday. Vets could sense that Ovono was on edge, and it was his mistake again in the 75th minute that handed Vets the winning goal.
To the shot, and what is that? What was that? It wasn't even hit that hard.
The students will lock horns with City in the semi-finals. Chippa United, who are in the MTN 8 for the first time, defeated Platinum Stars 2-0 in their own backyard on Saturday afternoon. The Dan Malisela-led team, known for their enterprising football, took the game to Stars from the wet goal, and Dikwena never recovered. The Chile boys will be up against Mamelodi Sundowns in what promises to be a mouth-watering semi-final. The Brazilians won the Tshwane Derby, beating SuperSport United 3-1 at Loftus Versfeld on Sunday.
The league has to meet and decide on the venues and the times. So the first round is scheduled for the weekend of the 10th and the 11th, and that's as much as I can tell you, because we don't know who's going to play on the 10th and we don't know who's going to play on the 11th. But there will be definitely games that weekend. And the second round will be on the 17th and 18th.
ABSA Premiership matches will be on hold this week because of the FIFA calendar. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
South Africa's Kevin Anderson will face Japan's Yoshihito Nishioka in the opening round of the US Open tennis tournament in New York later today. Top seed and defending champion Novak Djokovic of Serbia and former champion Rafael Nadal of Spain will also be in action today, the first day. The US Open is the final Grand Slam of the year.
Several changes have been made at Flushing Meadows over the last 12 months. These include new stadiums, wider walkways, refurbished courts, and a retractable roof on the Arthur Ashe Stadium. Some things, however, stay the same, like the 256 men and women who will vie for two of the most prestigious tennis titles in the world, men's and women's singles champion at the US Open. Last year's event saw one of the biggest upsets in tennis history. American Serena Williams spectacularly crashed out in the semi-finals to Italy's Roberta Vinci, ending Williams' bid for an historic calendar Grand Slam. Williams is currently recovering from a shoulder injury and will face Russian Ekaterina Makarova on Tuesday. Djokovic, meanwhile, has had to deal with a sore wrist. He's up against Jerzy Janowicz of Poland.
The wrist hasn't been in an ideal state for the last three and a half weeks, but I'm doing everything in my power with obviously the medical team to make sure that I'm as close to 100% as possible during the course of this tournament.
Second-seeded Brit Andy Murray is also a title favourite. Murray lost to Anderson in the fourth round last year, but has had an impressive 2016 so far, winning Wimbledon for the second time and the gold medal at the Rio Olympics. But missing from the draw is world number 4 Roger Federer, after failing to recover from a knee injury. The Swiss legend will sit out the event for the first time since 1999. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Now to golf news, where American golfer Patrick Reed has rallied from a 2-shot deficit to win the Barclays and also secure a spot on the US Ryder Cup team. The 26-year-old beat fellow American Sean O'Hare and Argentina's Emiliano Grillo by a shot in New York to go top of the FedEx Cup point standings.
There's still a month to go before this year's Ryder Cup, but the drama already kicked into high gear Sunday afternoon. Needing third place or better at the Barclays to claim one of the 8 automatic qualifying spots on the United States team. Overnight, co-leader Ricky Fowler played the last 4 holes in 3 over with a double bogey at the 16th. He eventually carded a 74 and finished tied for 7th, 3 strokes back. After a final round of 66, O'Hare's joint second-place finish means that he is one of 5 players who moved inside the top 100 of the FedEx Cup standings. The defending champion and world number 1, Jason Day, was tied for 4th alongside Adam Scott and Gary Woodland at 7 under 277. Reed carded a final round 70 despite bogeys on 2 of the last 3 holes to finish at 9 under par 275. This was his first victory since the Tournament of Champions last season and 5th of his PGA Tour career. Tabiso Sitole, SABC News.
Now, Mercedes driver Nico Rosberg has won the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa. Rosberg now trails teammate and championship leader Lewis Hamilton by just 9 points. Hamilton, who started in last place after receiving a 55-place grid penalty during qualifying, was third.
Lights out, away we go. The race with Rosberg on pole got off to a chaotic start. Ferrari Sebastian Vettel and teammate Kimi Raikkonen collided on the first bend.
Vettel gets hit by Raikkonen because Verstappen squeezed down the inside there.
Max Verstappen of Red Bull then pitted after suffering wing damage. Moments later, it was all over for McLaren's Jenson Button after being hit in the back. And then Renault's Kevin Magnussen spectacularly crashed into the side barrier on lap 6, leading to the race being stopped on the 9th lap to make the necessary barrier repairs. Magnussen left the scene with a slight limp and was taken away to undergo precautionary tests.
Well, that is great to see him walking away.
Rosberg, however, did everything right. The German recorded his 20th career victory and his first at Spa.
Fantastic drive, Nico. Well done. Thank you, Paddy. Awesome results. Awesome.
Red Bull's Daniel Ricciardo finished in second place, followed by Hamilton.
No, it's been great, of course, to get the win today on this special track. You know, it's a legendary track. But Lewis, starting from the back, of course, made it a lot easier this weekend. And I'm sure he's going to be back in Monza, and it's going to be a big battle as always.
The teams will now prepare for the Italian Grand Prix next weekend. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Right, we've gotten to the end of the show, but before I let you go, here's a quick look on social media for your comments on this past weekend sports. It was a cracker of a weekend, a whole lot of action from the box, MTN8, as well as the Pro Tiers will still play. Let's see what's out there. First up, Alex Goldberg waiting to see which journalist will bust this headline out. Combrink injury rubs Salta into the Bok wounds. Very clever. Alex Goldberg, you should be a copywriter, I tell you. Andre Janssen, the Springboks, the forwards play well as individuals, not as a pack. Do we have the right captain? Yes, that question will keep coming up because we all know that Strauss was brought in as an interim captain, but good question. Paul Graham, going through a rebuilding, the Springbok process. The Springboks are going through a rebuilding process. Timing just about right, and knock them at your peril. I'm sure they will come back stronger. Paul Graham, you and I agree. I absolutely believe what you're saying. Andre Janssen comes back. Springboks is the coach learning from Super Rugby. How can a 10 playing one of the best seasons in his life be so ordinary? Game plan. Interesting that. You know, Super Rugby is one thing, Test Rugby is something else altogether. Do we have any more? I'm hoping that we've got a little bit on the MTN8 and maybe a little bit on... Oh, okay, we do not have any more. We've run out of time. I do believe that Midday Report is standing by to take over your screens. In the meantime, thanks very much for having joined us. We'll be back tomorrow morning with the entire team, Eben as well as Renee. Until then, Lisaling Sintle.